My ex-girlfriend arrived at my wedding wearing the red dress she once promised to save for my proposal. She crossed the marble aisle while 600 guests watched, took the microphone from the officiant, and said, "Grant, you cannot marry a woman you met 3 months ago. You loved me for 7 years." I looked at Camille Renshaw, then at the bride beside me. Dahlia Whitmore did not tighten her grip or hide behind security. She simply waited for my decision. That mattered. Camille's voice broke. "Tell them this wedding is only a business arrangement. Tell them you are still angry and trying to punish me. Come home and I will marry you today." Someone in the rear of the glass chapel dropped a champagne flute. I handed my bouquet to Dahlia, stepped down from the platform, and stopped far enough from Camille that she could not mistake courtesy for invitation. "Which home?" I asked. "The apartment where you hid every photograph of us before Nolan visited? The hotel where your friends drafted my breakup fee? Or the life in which I was expected to wait until another man decided whether he wanted you?" Camille went white. I continued before she could rewrite the question. "You ended our relationship in writing. I accepted. I did not marry Dahlia to punish you. I am marrying her because she knows the truth, respects my choices, and has never asked me to become smaller so she can keep another door open." The wedding hall became silent enough to hear rain strike the glass roof. Camille had rushed 300 miles believing the old version of me would return the moment she offered marriage. She had no idea that version had not died from heartbreak. He had simply stopped volunteering for humiliation. To understand how we reached that aisle, we need to go back 12 weeks to an alumni fundraiser in Grayford and the first honest question anyone had asked Camille in years. The event occupied the rooftop of the Hartwell Museum. My former university classmates had spent the evening bidding on charity lots, comparing promotions, and pretending not to measure one another's watches. I attended because my consulting firm had donated a public housing risk audit. Camille attended because Renshaw Urban needed investors. We arrived separately. That had become normal during the final year of our relationship. Camille said public photographs distracted from business. I accepted the explanation at first. Then I noticed she only avoided cameras when Nolan Pryce or his family might see them. I was not blind. I was patient. And those are not the same condition. 6 months earlier, I had asked Camille directly whether she still wanted a future with me. She requested time until her 30th birthday. I gave her a deadline, not an endless promise. During those 6 months, I separated our finances, documented my work for her company, and moved every shared contract into clear legal language. If she chose us, we would begin honestly. If she did not, I would leave without turning 7 years into a courtroom. The fundraiser happened 9 days before that deadline. After the auction, our classmates began a game called The Unanswered Question. A person drew a card and had to call someone connected to the question. Refusal required a large donation. Camille drew, "Call the person whose answer could change your life." Her friends Portia Wynn and Greer Maddox cheered before she even read it aloud. That reaction told me they knew who she would choose. Camille looked at me from across the table. "It is only a game," she said. "Then play it honestly." She selected Nolan Pryce. The call connected on speaker. A man answered from a noisy restaurant. "Camille?" Her practiced confidence vanished. "Do you remember what you told me when we were 17? The table quieted. Nolan sighed. "The promise about 30? We are both almost there." "Camille, this is not the place. Just answer. If you were free on my birthday, would you finally choose me?" She was not drunk. Nobody had forced the words out of her. She asked clearly while I sat 12 feet away wearing the ring she had given me on our 5th anniversary. Nolan paused. "If I were free," he said, "we would talk." It was not even a yes. Camille still closed her eyes like someone receiving a proposal. Portia touched my arm. "Grant, do not make a scene. You know they grew up together." I removed my ring and placed it beside Camille's untouched dessert. "I am not making a scene." She stared at the ring. What are you doing? Answering the question you avoided for 6 months. It was a game. The game did not choose the number. It did not mention the promise. It did not ask whether he would choose you. Camille's expression hardened because anger felt safer than accountability. You listened to one awkward phone call and decided 7 years mean nothing? No. I spent 6 months verifying whether the last 7 meant the same thing to both of us. I took a folder from my briefcase and placed it on the table. It contained the termination of our residential lease, division of shared property, release of my personal guarantees from Renshaw Urban, and resignation from every unpaid advisory position Camille's father had gradually assigned to me. The effective date was her birthday. You planned this, she whispered. I prepared for either answer. If you chose our relationship, the unsigned papers would have remained in my drawer. Tonight, you made the decision early. Greer stood. You cannot abandon her company over one argument. My company licensed Renshaw Urban 3 forecasting models at no cost because Camille and I were building a household. The license agreement expires when that household ends. I gave the board 4 months' notice and offered a commercial renewal. They declined because they assumed I would keep working for free. Several classmates suddenly became interested in their drinks. Camille's family had spent years calling me a modest consultant with no ambition. They were comfortable using my work as long as they could pretend it had no independent value. Sit down, Camille told Greer. Then she faced me. We are not ending 7 years at a fundraiser. We are ending them because you have been waiting for someone else since before we met. That is not fair. Then tell me now, not on your birthday, not after Nolan decides. Do you choose a future with me without keeping his promise alive? Her mouth opened. No answer came. I nodded once. That is the answer. I paid for our table's final charity lot, thanked the host, and left. Nobody chased me. Outside, the autumn wind carried rain across the museum steps. My friend Jasper Keene waited beside the curb with his coat unbuttoned and an expression of restrained fury. I saw the live stream, he said. There was a live stream? Porsche broadcasts everything except self-awareness. I checked the event page. The call, my ring, and half the conversation had reached thousands of viewers before the host ended the stream. That complicates the corporate notice, I said. Jasper stared at me. Your 7-year relationship ended 30 seconds ago, and you were thinking about notice requirements? The emotional part ended gradually. Tonight was signature and delivery. That was not entirely true. My chest felt hollow, and each breath hurt in a place no medical scan would find. But pain did not require chaos to prove it existed. Jasper drove me to the apartment Camille and I had shared for 4 years. I packed 1 suitcase and 2 document boxes. Most furniture belonged to her. The books, cookware, and framed travel photographs could be divided later through the inventory I had already prepared. I took the old acoustic guitar my grandfather left me. It had never been a piano. That distinction would matter because Camille's favorite story about our first meeting claimed she fell for me while I played piano at a student concert. I had actually played guitar while Jasper sang beside me. Nolan played piano. For 7 years, she had remembered another man's silhouette over my music. Jasper carried the document boxes. Where are you going? Hotel tonight, Alderhaven tomorrow. Your family finally won? They offered me a seat on the Halberg Union board. I kept refusing because Camille believed leaving Grayford would damage her career. And because you wanted to succeed without the family name. I did. My legal name had always been Grant Halberg, but in Grayford I used my mother's older surname, Hale, on professional materials. It was not an elaborate disguise. Halberg was common enough that most people never connected a quiet operations consultant to the only child of Alderhaven's largest infrastructure group. Camille knew my real surname and that my parents were comfortable. She had never asked more because she believed she already understood my place beneath hers. I called my mother from the hotel. Joanna Halberg answered at once. Are you injured? Emotionally or physically? Grant. Physically fine. Camille and I ended things. My mother remained silent for exactly 3 seconds. Then I heard a bottle open. Was that champagne? Sparkling water. At midnight? Your father is celebrating hydration. Edmund Halberg shouted from the background. Tell him the board seat remains available. I heard. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed. I am coming home, but not to hide. I will review the board proposal on its merits. Agreed. And I will meet the Whitmore daughter you keep mentioning, but there will be no arranged engagement. My mother softened. There was never an engagement. Dahlia rejected that idea before you did. We only thought the two of you should speak.
Good. She is leading the independent review for Horizon Harbor. You may dislike each other professionally. Even better.
My parents had spent 2 years suggesting that Dahlia Whitmore and I might suit one another. I assumed it was an elite family matchmaking exercise. Learning she had refused any obligation improved my opinion before we met. Come home, my mother said. Sleep first. Decisions later. That was the first offer anyone made that night without asking me to carry something for them. Back at the museum, Camille remained at the table after the other guests moved away. The ring lay beside her hand. Portia whispered that I was bluffing. Greer said I would return by morning because I always returned. Camille opened the folder. Every page had been prepared by a lawyer. The shared apartment notice was valid. The consulting licenses were real. A schedule listed each system I had built for Renshaw Urban, the market price, and the number of warnings their board had ignored. At the bottom, I had written one personal line. I will not punish your employees for our failure. A transition team is available for 90 days if the company signs a fair contract. Camille read it twice. He expected this, she said. Portia rolled her eyes. He wants you to panic and chase him. No. Camille touched the empty place on her finger. Grant does not threaten. He plans. The certainty in her voice unsettled her friends. Her phone rang. Nolan's name appeared. Camille answered immediately. About what you asked, he began. I need you not to read too much into it. My family has negotiations underway. Are you dating someone? It is complicated. You said if you were free. I said we would talk. The hope she had protected for 13 years suddenly looked less like romance and more like a door Nolan enjoyed leaving unlocked. Grant left me, she said. Nolan exhaled. I am sorry. Are you? Of course. You should rest. We can discuss everything on my birthday. His birthday was 9 days away. Camille looked at my ring on the table. No, we discuss it now. The call ended from Nolan's side. For the first time, she felt the exact shape of waiting without an answer. I boarded the morning train to Alderhaven. Flying would have been faster, but I needed 4 quiet hours between my old life and my family. Jasper accompanied me to the platform. Do not marry the first beautiful woman your mother puts in front of you, he said. That is an oddly specific warning. You have a weakness for controlled expressions and excellent tailoring. I also have pattern recognition now. You always had it. You simply kept treating loyalty like evidence that the pattern would improve. The train doors opened. I carried that sentence with me to Alderhaven. Rain followed the train north. When I reached the capital, a transit strike had emptied the taxi lane. I refused the family driver because I wanted to walk through the station unnoticed. 2 minutes later, a courier cart lost a wheel on the wet ramp and sent 6 crates sliding toward a group of children. I dropped my suitcase and caught the first crate. A woman in a charcoal coat stopped the second with her heel, redirected it into a pillar, and pulled the children behind her. We worked without introductions. I stabilized the broken cart with my luggage strap. She called station safety, documented the failed wheel assembly, and made the courier supervisor close the ramp before someone was hurt. You noticed the axle fracture, she said. You noticed the missing inspection tag. Occupational habit. Same. She had dark hair pinned loosely at her neck, gray-green eyes,
and the kind of face photographers would describe as perfect before discovering it was also impatient. Rain had marked one sleeve. She seemed not to notice. "Grant Hale?" she asked. I became cautious. "Who wants to know?" "Dahlia Whitmore." Of course the woman my parents wanted me to meet had found me while we were preventing a minor station disaster. "You are early," I said. "You refused the driver and changed platforms." "You tracked me?" "Your mother called mine. Mine called me. I was already here inspecting the transit contract. No secret surveillance was required." Direct, factual, no wounded performance. Refreshing. I picked up my suitcase. "Before our families start selecting flowers, I recently ended a long relationship." "I know. The fundraiser clip is circulating." That sentence makes me want to return to the train. The clip makes you look calm. The comments make everyone look foolish, including me. Especially anyone who believes 7 years can be understood in 90 seconds. I looked at her more carefully. Dahlia held out my wet luggage strap. "I agreed to dinner, not marriage. You owe me nothing beyond honest conversation. If today is too soon, we cancel. Dinner is fine." "Good. Your father reserved a room for 20 people. I changed it to a table for 4. You may be my favorite person in Alderhaven. You have been here 6 minutes." The competition performed poorly. Her smile arrived slowly, crossing her face like light through storm clouds. For the first time since the fundraiser, the hollow place in my chest made room for curiosity. Dinner took place in a quiet room above my parents' favorite bookstore. Joanna embraced me for long enough to confirm every bone remained attached. Edmund shook my hand, then ignored the formality and pulled me into a hug. Dahlia's eldest sister, Marisol Whitmore, joined us. She ran Whitmore Civic Ventures and had the polite stillness of a person who could end a negotiation by closing a folder. Nobody discussed marriage during the first course. My mother lasted until the soup. "Since both of you will review Horizon Harbor separately," Dahlia said. "Of course. I only meant you will be in the same city." Edmund became fascinated by bread. I put down my spoon. "Let us remove the performance. Our families believe we might be compatible. Dahlia and I have agreed only to dinner. I ended a relationship last night. Any expectation beyond professional courtesy would be unfair." Marisol nodded. "Sensible." Dahlia looked at me. "I would add that I am interested in knowing Grant, but interest is not a debt he must repay." My mother opened her mouth, saw 4 warning expressions, and drank water instead. After dinner, Dahlia and I walked through the bookstore. She stopped beside a shelf of urban planning journals and pulled out an issue containing an article I had written under the Hale surname. "I criticized this piece," she said. "Half the industry criticized it." I did so in 43 annotated comments. I recognized the number. For 3 years, an anonymous reviewer using the initials DW had challenged my models, identified weak assumptions, and improved every paper I published. "You are DW. You are difficult to persuade. You tried to disprove a flood model using rainfall data from the wrong decade." I corrected that in comment 28. After calling my methodology decorative? It was decorative. This woman was not a photograph my parents had selected. She was the sharpest professional opponent I had never met. "Why did you not tell me before dinner?" I asked. "I wanted to see whether you treated a stranger's competence differently from a known heir's." "And?" "You handed me the broken wheel while you took the heavier crate. Mildly traditional, but practical under the angle." "A passing grade?" "Provisional." We spent an hour arguing about the harbor redevelopment beside shelves that closed around us as employees turned off lights. By the time we noticed, our families had left together. Dahlia checked her phone. "They abandoned us strategically." My parents call that giving space. Marisol calls it data collection. At the station garage, Dahlia gave me 2 folders. One contained the independent review charter for Horizon Harbor. The other contained a proposed 30-day personal agreement. You drafted terms for dating? For meeting without family interference. 1 dinner a week, no press announcements, no exclusivity assumed. Either person may end it without business consequences. No wedding discussions. I read the last clause twice. This is the least romantic invitation I have received. Is that a refusal? No.
It is a compliment. I signed. We did not kiss. We did not pretend a rescue at the station was destiny. Dahlia drove me to my parents' home, shook my hand, and told me to read the harbor soil reports before our meeting on Monday. I slept 10 uninterrupted hours. In Grayford, Camille slept for 40 minutes. She arrived at our apartment just after sunrise and found my key on the dining table. The shelves looked almost unchanged. That made my absence worse. I had removed only what belonged to me, leaving no broken picture frames or dramatic note for her to blame. The nanny handed her an inventory and a sealed envelope. Inside was a short letter. Camille, our relationship ended when you declined to choose it. The legal documents protect both of us. Please communicate through counsel regarding property and through my firm's transition manager regarding Renshaw Urban. Do not use company employees or mutual friends to contact me. I hope you eventually build a life that is chosen, not postponed. Grant. She called me 11 times. My phone directed her to a recorded message stating that personal communication was paused for 30 days. Portia declared the boundary manipulative. Greer suggested sending gifts to my parents. Camille rejected both ideas, which was the first reasonable decision she made after the fundraiser. Then her father called. Why has Hale Advisory terminated sight glass access? Victor Renshaw demanded. Because the license expired. Grant would never damage us over a lover's quarrel. He offered a commercial renewal 4 months ago, at an insulting price, at 40% below the market rate. Camille knew because she had quietly compared it. Her father refused on principle. He considered any request from me negotiable through his daughter. Bring him back, Victor said. The relationship is over. Then repair it. For the company? Do not be childish. Personal feelings have always supported business. Camille looked around the home where I had cooked, organized, repaired, and advised without invoices. For the first time, she saw how many people had described dependence as love because the word was cheaper. We will pay the license, she said. Her father laughed. With what cash? The South Bank overruns consumed our reserve. Sightglass had warned about those overruns 9 months earlier. Victor overrode the alert because acknowledging my model would require admitting his own estimates were wrong. Then sell the vacant properties, Camille said. Bring Grant home. He ended the call. Camille sat alone until evening, when Nolan sent an invitation to his 30th birthday dinner. The message included no private explanation, only a formal card and a request that she bring Renshaw's waterfront proposal. She almost refused. Then, 13 years of anticipation defeated 1 night of clarity. 9 days later, Nolan's birthday filled a private club overlooking Grayford River. Camille wore black instead of the white dress her friend selected. She did not bring the waterfront proposal. Portia and Greer positioned her near the cake. They still believed the old promise would rescue every mistake. Nolan arrived late with a woman named Beatrix Lane, an investigative journalist known for exposing political donors. Everyone, Nolan said. This is Beatrix, my partner. Camille waited for the correction. None came. Beatrix wore no enormous jewel and made no theatrical claim. She simply placed a hand beside Nolan's on the table. He covered it with his own. During the toast, Portia could not remain quiet. Nolan, you once promised Camille something at 30. The room stiffened. Nolan closed his eyes briefly. I made a stupid joke when we were 17. You reminded her of it every year, Greer said. No, she reminded me. I failed to answer clearly.
Camille stood.
Then answer clearly now.
Nolan faced her. For once, no girlfriend, family negotiation, or unfinished sentence stood between them. I care about you as a childhood friend. I have never wanted to marry you. The words were quiet. They still reached every corner. Camille's face emptied. Portia tried to attack the answer. Then why did you constantly parade new girlfriends in front of her? Why say you would talk if you were free? Nolan looked ashamed. Because my grandfather and Victor Renshaw drafted a private merger plan around that old promise. If Camille and I were both single after 30, they intended to announce an engagement and pressure us through the boards. I kept a public relationship active near every deadline. Some were real, 2 were staged. It was cowardly, but it delayed them. Beatrix removed her hand. You told me the staged relationships were tabloid inventions, she said. They were arrangements before we met.
You also told Camille we would talk if you were free. Nolan had engineered ambiguities so carefully that it now trapped him from both sides. I did not want her to cause trouble for the Pryce-Renshaw partnership, he admitted.
Camille laughed once, an empty sound. So you kept me hopeful to protect a deal.
You had Grant.
And you used that to avoid being honest. You used Grant for the same reason, Beatrix said. Camille turned toward her. There was no cruelty in Beatrix's expression, only fact. You both kept another person close while protecting a private possibility, she continued. Neither of you gets to call that romance. Beatrix left the club. Nolan followed. Camille did not. Portia put a hand around her shoulders. Grant will calm down. Camille removed the hand. Stop saying that. We are trying to help. You streamed the call. You pressed me to treat his work like a breakup fee. You told me he was beneath my family.
And I listened because it made my decisions feel harmless. Greer became defensive. You cannot blame us for your relationship. I blame myself. I am asking you to stop helping me avoid it. She left without cutting the cake. That was the evening Camille finally knew Nolan would never choose her. It was not yet the evening she accepted that I no longer would. My first month in Alderhaven moved quickly. I reviewed Halberg Union's board offer and rejected the initial version because it gave me authority without accountability. Edmund did not punish the refusal. He asked me to redraft it. I proposed a 1-year operational role, independent ethics supervision, and removal from any decision involving Hale advisory. The board approved after 3 days of argument. I earned the position in a room where everyone knew my surname. That mattered more than inheriting it. Dahlia and I began the Horizon Harbor review from opposite sides. Halberg Union planned transit and utilities.
Whitmore Civic Ventures led environmental recovery. Renshaw Urban wanted the central design contract. Pryce Capital arranged financing. Every family connected to my old relationship had arrived inside one project. We should disclose the conflict, I told Dahlia. Already filed. She handed me the public register. Your former relationship, prior consulting work, and software license are listed. You will not score Renshaw bids. I will not score Whitmore subcontractors. You completed this before I asked. I prefer avoiding scandals to surviving them beautifully. Our first weekly dinner occurred in a small noodle shop near the harbor. Dahlia chose it because no photographer could fit between the tables. She asked about Camille once, not for gossip, but to understand my boundaries. I told her the complete version. You remained after learning about Nolan? She asked. I remained for 6 months after confirming the pattern.
I wanted Camille to make an informed choice rather than reacting to an accusation. Would you do that again? No. A deadline is useful. Waiting beside someone while they evaluate your worth is not. Dahlia nodded. I ended an engagement 2 years ago because the man described my company shares as our future leverage. How long did you wait? Long enough to verify he said it twice. Efficient. Painfully. We did not compare scars to determine who deserved sympathy.
We simply placed the facts between us. On our second dinner, she taught me to make dumplings and laughed when my first one opened in the pot. On our third, I brought my guitar to the Whitmore greenhouse because she admitted she had only heard the fundraiser story about a piano. "So, Camille confused your instrument with Nolan's?" Dahlia asked. "For 7 years. Play the song she failed to remember." "I would rather play a new one." I did. Dahlia listened without speaking. When the final chord faded among the glass and winter flowers, she asked whether she could kiss me. The directness startled me more than the question. "I am interested," I said, "but I do not know whether I am ready." "That is an answer." She did not pout, negotiate, or turn away dramatically. She asked if I wanted tea. I wanted tea. At the end of the 30-day agreement, Dahlia arrived at my office with a blank extension form. "We can end this," she said. "Continue casually, become exclusive, or take a break until the harbor review finishes." "What do you want?" "Exclusivity, with no wedding timetable and no family announcement until we decide together." I considered my answer overnight. The next morning, I went to the station where we first met. Dahlia was inspecting the repaired ramp. I handed her the extension with the exclusive box marked. Then I asked if the postponed kiss was still available. It was. The station safety camera captured only the backs of our coats.
Marisol obtained the footage anyway and sent Dahlia a single message. "Provisional grade improved." We laughed until a transit supervisor asked us to move. Camille learned my full identity from a business newspaper 3 days later. The article announced that Grant Halberg, founder of Hale Advisory, had joined Halberg Union as Chief Operations Officer. A photograph showed me beside Edmund at a rail yard inspection. The caption identified me as his only child. Camille read the sentence until the letters blurred. She had known my surname. She had met my parents twice through video calls. Joanna introduced herself as a retired accountant because she did not want to intimidate Camille, and Edmund described his work as transportation. Neither statement was technically false. Camille never asked what scale of transportation employed 70,000 people. My privacy did not make her 7 years meaningless. It did expose how confidently she had accepted the version of me that placed her above me. Victor Renshaw reacted differently. He stormed into her office holding the article. "You dated the Halberg heir for 7 years and failed to secure a single investment?" "I dated a person, not a financing instrument." "Do not pretend principle now. You allowed him to leave over Nolan Pryce. You encouraged the Pryce marriage plan because I believed Grant was an ordinary consultant." The confession ended something in her. "And if he were?" Camille asked. "Would that make it acceptable to use him?" Victor threw the newspaper onto her desk. "Renshaw Urban has 6 weeks of liquidity. Sightglass is disabled, South Bank penalties are due, and Price Capital has delayed our credit line. Call Grant." "No." "Then resign." Camille opened the board portal and displayed the commercial renewal I had offered. "Approve this contract, and the transition team returns tomorrow."
The price is extortion.
The price is lower than our annual executive car budget. He gave it free before. I gave him 7 years of reasons to stop. Her father struck the desk. "Your private guilt does not run this company. Neither does your pride. The risk committee meets at 4. I am recommending approval." For the first time, Camille used the authority attached to her title instead of preserving it for a future that involved Nolan. The board approved the license by 1 vote. Hale Advisory returned under a new team that reported to neither Camille nor me. Renshaw Urban survived the immediate crisis, but the audit uncovered bid irregularities connected to Price Capital. Camille sent 1 personal email to my attorney. "Grant was right about the commercial value. The contract is approved without personal conditions. I will respect the communication pause." No apology yet. No request to return. It was a small step away from entitlement. I did not reply because respecting a boundary does not earn access through that same boundary. At Horizon Harbor,
Dahlia and I discovered something worse than overruns. Soil samples from the eastern terminal had been altered. The official report declared the grounds stable. Independent cores showed a buried industrial reservoir capable of releasing toxic runoff into the bay. Pryce Capital had already marketed luxury apartments for that site. Renshaw Urban's concept drawings placed a school on the worst section. "Who signed the environmental summary?" I asked. Dahlia enlarged the document. "A Whitmore subsidiary." Her face changed. "Your company?" "One Marisol acquired last year. The testing predates the acquisition, but our name now guarantees it." She could have hidden the conflict long enough to investigate privately. Instead, she called the oversight chair from the site trailer and disclosed it on speaker. Trading in Whitmore Civic shares paused within an hour. News crews surrounded headquarters. Marisol faced demands to resign despite having no role in the falsification. At my office, advisors suggested Halberg Union distance itself and allow Whitmore to absorb the scandal. "No," I said. "We disclose our reliance on their report and fund independent sampling." One director objected. "This is their liability. It becomes ours if we knowingly use the same data after discovering the flaw. Your personal relationship creates an appearance problem. Then remove me from the technical decision and record that I requested it. Do not use my relationship as an excuse to avoid our duty." The board appointed an external engineer. I remained responsible for evacuation planning if contamination had spread. Dahlia did not answer my calls that evening. Not because she was avoiding me, but because regulators had taken every company device. I found her at the Harbor field office using a borrowed flashlight to compare paper drilling logs. "Your counsel wants you home," I said. "My counsel wants me silent." "Those are different requests." "I know." She pressed both hands against the table. "The falsified report passed 3 departments. Either our controls failed completely, or someone inside Whitmore protected it. Let the investigators determine which. People bought homes near this soil because our name meant safety. Responsibility means fixing the harm. It does not mean inventing personal guilt for an act that occurred before your company owned the lab." Dahlia looked at me with exhausted anger. "That is a convenient distinction." "It is an accurate one. Would you be this calm if Halberg had signed it?" "No, I would be louder and less useful. That is why you would remind me to separate guilt from action." She sat down. We worked through the night, building a timeline for regulators. At 3 in the morning, Dahlia admitted she had not eaten since breakfast. I found crackers in an emergency cabinet. She found instant coffee old enough to vote. "This is a terrible date," she said. "It does satisfy our weekly requirement." "I am not counting regulatory crisis crackers. Your standards have become extravagant." At dawn, we found an original laboratory invoice routed through a shell company owned by Pryce Capital. Nolan's grandfather had commissioned a second set of tests, received the contamination result, and paid to replace it before Whitmore's acquisition. We sent the evidence to investigators without alerting either family. Nolan called me that afternoon. "We should meet," he said, "through counsel. This concerns Camille." "Then call Camille. She thinks I manipulated the Renshaw board. I need you to explain that the financing delays are normal." "I have no basis to explain that. You know how emotional she gets. You spent years using her emotions to avoid an honest answer. You do not get to recruit me as an interpreter now." His friendliness disappeared.
You believe returning to the Halbergs makes you superior?
"No. I believe this conversation requires a lawyer." I ended the call and preserved the recording. Dahlia listened to it once. "He wanted you to contradict the audit before he knew what evidence we had." "Which means he knows the financing delay is connected." "Or his grandfather does." The scandal changed our 30-day arrangement into something neither contract anticipated. We faced cameras, family pressure, and 12-hour workdays. It would have been easy to postpone the personal part indefinitely. Dahlia refused. Every Thursday,
She closed both laptops for 1 hour. Sometimes we ate on the office roof. Sometimes we walked around the same harbor we were trying to protect. Once, we sat in silence inside her car while rain turned the windshield silver. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. "Dinner?" "Protecting time when everything else is burning." "Because I do not want to build a relationship from leftover minutes." That is how people wake up 7 years later and discover they were only useful. The sentence was not aimed at Camille. It described Dahlia's own fear. Her former fiancé had praised her competence until competence interfered with his control. After she ended the engagement, he told newspapers she was incapable of intimacy. Since then, Dahlia had treated personal desire like confidential information. "I am afraid of becoming dependent on someone who values me only when I solve problems," she said. "I value that you corrected my flood model after insulting it." "Not helping." "I value that you stopped a crate before checking whether anyone important was watching." "I value that you asked before kissing me." "I value that you disclose bad news faster than good news." "And I like the face you make when dumplings open in boiling water." "That face is private." "I am the only witness."
She leaned across the center console and kissed me. This time, neither of us postponed it. 2 months after the fundraiser, regulators cleared Whitmore Civic of deliberate falsification but required major control reforms. Marisol accepted them publicly. Pryce Capital's founder came under investigation. Nolan resigned from the Harbor Financing Committee, claiming health reasons. Camille's company was not cleared. Someone at Renshaw Urban had received the genuine soil report before submitting the design. The signature belonged to Victor Renshaw's deputy, but metadata showed access from Victor's office. Camille traveled to Alderhaven for a regulatory interview. She did not contact me. We crossed paths in the courthouse lobby anyway. She wore a plain gray suit and carried the same document case I had given her years earlier. When she saw Dahlia beside me, her step faltered. "Grant." "Camille." Dahlia offered a professional greeting. "Ms. Renshaw?" Camille looked at our hands. We were not touching, but we stood with the unconscious alignment of people accustomed to moving together. "Can we speak privately?" she asked. "If it concerns the investigation, counsel must attend. If it is personal, the 30-day pause has ended, but I am not interested in revisiting the relationship." "I only want 10 minutes. Dahlia looked at me, not Camille. "Do you want me to wait?" The choice was mine. She made that visible. "Nearby," I said. Camille and I sat in a public consultation room with glass walls. She placed my old ring on the table. "I found this at the museum." "Keep it, sell it, or donate it." "You chose it with me." "I also chose the relationship. Choices can end when the conditions change." Camille's fingers closed around the ring. "Nolan never intended to marry me." "I heard." "He kept girlfriends to avoid the family plan. Some were fake." "That explains his behavior. It does not change yours." "I know." She swallowed. "I came to say that without an excuse. I used your patience as permission. I kept you private because I wanted Nolan to think I was available. I accepted your work for free because my father called it family contribution, but I would not call you family when you asked. I am sorry." It was the first apology that did not end with a request. "Thank you for saying it clearly." Hope appeared despite her effort to hide it. "Is there any possibility that, after time—" "No." The rejection was immediate because gentleness should not manufacture ambiguity. Camille lowered her eyes. "I do not hate you," I continued. "I want you to cooperate with the investigation, protect your employees, and build a life that is not organized around being chosen. But I will not return." "Because of her?" "Because I ended us before Dahlia and I began. She is not the obstacle between you and me." Through the glass, Dahlia stood reading a report. She did not watch our conversation. Camille placed the ring back in her bag. "Are you going to marry her?" "We have not decided." "If you do, will you tell me?" "No.
That information would not help either of us. She nodded as though the answer hurt, but made sense. We left through opposite doors. Dahlia waited until the elevator closed before asking, "Are you all right?" "Yes." Was her apology sincere? I think part of it was. Did that make leaving harder? It made the past less ugly. The future remains unchanged. Dahlia took my hand. Camille saw the gesture through the consultation room glass. She did not follow. That evening, I told Dahlia I loved her. Not because Camille apologized, not because my parents wanted a wedding, not because two corporations needed a prettier headline. I said it while we washed regulatory crisis coffee cups in my apartment. Dahlia was wearing one of my old shirts. Her hair was tied with a rubber band, and she had just informed me that I loaded the dishwasher like a person who distrusted geometry. "I love you," I said. She held a wet cup in midair. Was the geometry insult unusually moving? It clarified something. "Say it again when I am not holding breakable evidence." She put down the cup, dried her hands, and faced me. I repeated it. Dahlia kissed me, then whispered the same words against my mouth. No audience, no family contract, no one waiting on another line. That was our real beginning. Loving Dahlia did not make the next decision automatic. We discussed marriage the way we discussed the harbor, openly, with uncomfortable data included. We compared finances, work schedules, family expectations, health histories, preferred cities, children, religion, privacy, and what each of us considered betrayal. Dahlia wanted a partnership in which neither person used silence as punishment.
I wanted a home where help was offered rather than quietly converted into debt. We both wanted separate professional identities and one shared calendar because apparently romance could not defeat scheduling software. "Would you sign a prenuptial agreement?" she asked. Yes. Separate inherited assets? Yes. No automatic board seats through marriage? Definitely. Mandatory annual vacation? I hesitated. Grant? Define vacation. That answer proves the clause is required. We spent 6 weeks drafting an agreement with independent attorneys. Our parents complained that the document lacked romance. Marisol said good contracts protected romance from preventable confusion. On a cold morning in early February, the repaired station ramp reopened. Dahlia arrived for the inspection and found no reporters, relatives, or flower arch. I waited beside the safety barrier holding a small ring designed by a local metalworker from reclaimed rail steel and a single-family diamond my mother offered without conditions.
The first time we met here, I said, you gave me a provisional grade. You redirected a crate toward a structural pillar. It was deserved. Have I improved? Marginally. Enough for a lifetime extension? She looked at the ring and then at me. Her hands began to shake. This is not connected to a merger, board vote, public relations plan, parental request, or harbor contract, I said. If your answer is no, nothing professional changes. If it is not yet, I will wait without turning that waiting into leverage. Dahlia Whitmore, will you marry me because we have examined the choice and still want it? She laughed and cried at the same time. Yes. I placed the ring on her finger. Then she took a slim box from her coat. Inside was a watch engraved with coordinates for the same station. Were you planning to propose? I asked. Next Thursday. Should I return the ring and act surprised? Absolutely not. Dahlia fastened the watch around my wrist. This is my answer and my proposal. Will you marry me without assuming one request outranks the other? Yes. The station supervisor applauded from behind a maintenance door. He had promised privacy and lasted 40 seconds. Our families learned by lunch. The public learned the next morning after a commuter posted a photograph of us laughing beneath the reopened ramp sign. The announcement caused 3 kinds of headlines. Business papers praised a Halberg-Whitmore alliance. Society pages called Dahlia the most beautiful woman in Alderhaven. Less careful outlets described me as an unknown consultant who had transformed into an heir after being rejected by a provincial heiress. I hated the last version. It implied intelligence, family, and self-respect had appeared only after Camille hurt me.
In reality, the same skills that helped Renshaw Urban were now simply visible under my own name. Dahlia released a short statement with me. Our marriage is a personal choice. Neither company will receive ownership, governance rights, or preferential treatment through it. Professional conflicts remain subject to independent review. The statement was less exciting than gossip and therefore received limited attention. Camille read it alone in the temporary apartment she rented in Alderhaven. She had remained in the capital because investigators extended the soil report inquiry. Victor ordered her to return to Grayford. She refused, believing distance would allow him to destroy records. When she saw Dahlia's ring, she touched the empty place on her own hand. I had proposed marriage to Camille 3 times indirectly. At 26, I asked whether she imagined children. She changed the subject to Nolan's new girlfriend. At 28, I suggested buying a home together. She insisted separate addresses helped her public image. At 29, I asked for a decision before 30. She requested 6 months. Now I had known Dahlia for less than 1 season and offered a direct proposal. The speed felt like an insult until Camille forced herself to examine the difference. Dahlia had answered questions Camille avoided. She had disclosed conflicts Camille hid. Time had not created their honesty. Choice had. Camille typed "Congratulations," deleted it, and locked her phone. Victor arrived without warning. "You will attend their wedding," he said. "I am not invited." "Then obtain an invitation." "No." He placed a debt schedule on her table. Renshaw Urban had 23 days before lenders could seize 3 active developments. Thousands of employees and subcontractors depended on those projects. "Halberg Union can refinance this," Victor said. "Whitmore can guarantee the harbor exposure. You have access to both through Grant."
I have no access to Grant. You lived with him for 4 years. That was not an ownership stake. Spare me your new ethics. You created the problem. Repair it.
Camille turned to the final page. Several loans had been hidden from the board through special-purpose entities. Victor had signed every one. "You lied to directors. I preserved the company. You preserved control. The distinction will comfort employees when their wages stop." He left the schedule behind. Camille sent copies to her attorney and the independent audit committee. Then she spent the night calculating whether exposing her father would save the company or collapse it faster. Nolan contacted her the next morning. Pryce Capital offered emergency financing if Renshaw withdrew cooperation from the soil investigation and returned to the original harbor consortium. "Your grandfather falsified the test," Camille said. "You cannot prove he ordered it."
The shell company transfer bears his authorization code. Codes are delegated. So is blame.
Nolan lowered his voice. "Grant is marrying Whitmore. Once that happens, the 2 families will control the project and leave us outside. You still have influence with him."
"He rejected me because he was angry. Men do not forget 7 years in 3 months. You forgot 13. That ended the call. Camille should have blocked him. Instead, she saved the sentence about 3 months. It matched the thought she was already using to protect herself. My engagement could not be real because real love required time, and we had spent 7 years together. She ignored the fact that much of those 7 years had been borrowed against a future she never intended to give. Wedding planning began while the harbor investigation continued. Dahlia and I rejected a stadium, an island resort, and a palace whose brochure used the phrase imperial intimacy.
We chose the glass house at Whitmore Gardens because her late mother had designed its winter conservatory. The guest list still reached 600 after we removed most business acquaintances. Families that employed entire towns generated relatives at an alarming rate. "We can elope," I said after the 4th seating chart revision. "Marisol would track us through payment metadata." "Jasper knows a fisherman." My father becomes seasick in bathtubs. We kept the glass house.
Dahlia selected a simple ivory dress and banned magazines from photographing it before the ceremony. I chose a dark morning suit rather than the dramatic white jacket stylists recommended. We hired local musicians. I would play one guitar piece during the reception, eliminating all future instrument confusion. We also developed a plan for unwanted guests. "Camille may come," I said. Dahlia looked up from the security list. "Do you think she will?" Her father and Nolan are pressuring her to reach me.
Portia continues viewing my public profiles from 8 new accounts.
Romantic surveillance has become remarkably administrative. I do not want Camille publicly humiliated. If she arrives calmly, security offers a private room and asks what she needs. If she disrupts the ceremony, they remove her without force unless safety requires it. Dahlia studied me. "You are protecting her dignity." "I am protecting ours. Cruelty would not improve the wedding." Agreed. She added one instruction. No staff member was to treat Camille's past relationship as entertainment. 3 days before the ceremony, Portia called Dahlia from a blocked number. "You should know Grant met Camille privately at the courthouse," she said. "I know. Did he tell you she wants him back?" "Yes." Portia lost momentum. "He spent 7 years planning to marry her. Are you comfortable being a rebound?"
Are you comfortable calling a stranger to damage a marriage because your friend dislikes the result of her own decision?
"I am warning you." "Then provide information I do not already possess." Portia hung up. Dahlia told me that evening. She did not demand access to my messages or ask me to reassure her for crimes I had not committed. "Does it frighten you?" I asked. "Yes." The honesty surprised me. "I trust you," she continued. "Trust does not make me immune to the thought that 7 years may contain a language I cannot speak. It contains habits. Some were good. Most can be learned by anyone willing to ask. You do not need to compete with history." "Do you miss her?" "Sometimes I miss a morning or a city street connected to who I was then." "I do not want the relationship back." Dahlia nodded. "That answer is more useful than no." I took her hand. "Are you reconsidering the wedding?" "No, I am practicing saying fear before it becomes behavior."
We spent the final evening before the ceremony separately, not because tradition demanded it, but because Dahlia wanted one night with Marisol, and I wanted dinner with my parents and Jasper. Jasper arrived carrying a red emergency tie. "Why red?" I asked. "If you are in danger, wear it." "I am the groom. Everyone will assume fashion." Then blink twice during the vows. Edmund took the tie away from him. After dinner, my father gave me a watch that belonged to my grandfather. I already wore Dahlia's station watch. "Keep this one for a son, daughter, niece, or person who needs it," Edmund said. "Do not remove hers." "You have become diplomatic." "Your mother trained me." Joanna found me on the balcony later. "Are you certain?" she asked. "Yes." "Not grateful? Not relieved? Certain?" "All three, but certain first." She kissed my forehead. "Then sleep." Across the city, Camille did not sleep. The audit committee had voted to suspend Victor. He responded by calling an emergency shareholder meeting for the same morning as my wedding. If Camille attended, he would demand she recant her evidence. If she refused, he threatened to release private messages making it appear that she had traded information to me in exchange for marriage. The messages were fabricated, but scandal moved faster than proof. At midnight, Greer arrived with the red dress. "You bought this for Grant," she said. "Wear it. Go to the glass house. Tell him you choose him before it is legally too late." He said no, because Dahlia was standing outside. He said no before looking at her. Men say things. 7 years matter more. Camille held the dress. She remembered ordering it after our 5th anniversary, imagining the proposal she expected me to arrange, while she continued postponing the answer. "What if his wedding is real?" she asked. Greer hesitated. "Then at least you will know."
It was terrible advice, disguised as closure.
Camille put on the dress anyway. At 9 the next morning, she skipped the shareholder meeting, ignored 40 calls from Victor, and drove toward Whitmore Gardens. Portia sat beside her with a phone already prepared to record. Camille noticed. "Turn that off. If security mistreats us, we need proof. Turn it off or get out." Portia lowered the phone, but did not stop the hidden stream. The rain began as they crossed Alderhaven Bridge. At the glass house, Dahlia walked down the aisle beneath winter roses. Sunlight broke through the rain and covered the floor with moving color. Her dress held no enormous train or glittering advertisement. She looked like herself, which made her more beautiful than any photograph. When Marisol placed Dahlia's hand in mine, Dahlia whispered, "Provisional grade? Permanently under review. Acceptable." The officiant began. Outside the gardens, Camille abandoned her car in traffic and ran the final half-mile through rain. She reached the glass doors just as we exchanged personal vows. I promised not to confuse providing solutions with listening. Dahlia promised not to hide fear inside competence. We both promised to choose the marriage again whenever circumstances changed, rather than treating one ceremony as permanent permission. Camille heard those words through the door. For one brief, merciful second, she understood she should leave. Then Portia said, "If you walk away now, Dahlia wins forever." Camille pushed the doors open. Every head turned. Rain darkened her red dress from the knees down. Her hair had come loose. She looked less like a rival bride than someone who had run through a storm and reached the wrong conclusion. Security moved from both sides of the chapel. I raised one hand. Dahlia did not release the other. Camille walked to the front before courage could become thought. She took the microphone from the surprised officiant. "Grant, you cannot marry a woman you met 3 months ago. You loved me for 7 years." The hidden stream on Portia's phone transmitted the words to thousands of viewers. I looked at Dahlia. "Do you want security to remove her now?" I asked. "I want you to decide whether you need to answer." No claim, no public display of possession. Even in front of every family that might interpret patience as weakness, Dahlia left the choice with me. I gave her my bouquet and stepped down. Camille's relief came too early. "Tell them this is an alliance," she said. "Tell them you rushed because you were hurt. Come home with me. I will marry you today." "Which home?" I asked. The question from the beginning returned with its full weight. "The apartment where you hid our photographs before Nolan visited? The hotel where your friends calculated my breakup fee? Or the future where I waited to learn whether another man left you available?" Camille gripped the microphone. "I made mistakes, yes. I apologized." An apology acknowledges harm. It does not purchase the previous relationship. You cannot love her already. You do not get to define love by the amount of time someone tolerated uncertainty. The guests remained motionless. Even the rain seemed quieter beneath the glass. I kept my voice level. Dahlia knows how our relationship ended. She knows I once planned to marry you. She also knows that I ended those plans before meeting her. I did not hide you, and I did not use her to provoke you. Camille looked past me. "Dahlia, if you have any dignity, you will not marry someone who is rebounding from 7 years." Dahlia handed the bouquet to Marisol and joined us. "My dignity does not require insulting your grief," she said. "It also does not require surrendering my marriage so your choices can remain reversible." Camille flinched. "Grant is not a prize I won from you," Dahlia continued. "He is the person standing beside me after disclosing the past, discussing the future, and choosing today with full information. You should offer him the same respect you are requesting." Portia stepped into the aisle. "Camille flew here because she finally understands. Isn't love supposed to forgive?" Jasper stood from the front row. "Love can forgive without renewing a subscription." A few guests laughed before remembering they were at a formal wedding.
Portia raised her phone. The live stream comments reflected in the screen. Camille saw them. "You are broadcasting this? People need to see what they did to you." "What they did?" Camille's face changed. "I entered their wedding." Portia lowered the phone. "I was protecting you. You were turning my worst decision into content." Camille took the phone, ended the stream, and handed it to a security officer. That action restored a piece of her dignity that crashing the wedding had nearly destroyed.
She faced me one final time.
"If I had chosen you at the museum, would we be here?" No. The truth hurt Dahlia. I felt her hand tense, but she did not withdraw it. "I would have tried to repair our relationship," I continued. "That was the choice available then. It is not available now." Camille nodded through tears. "I understand." "Do you?" She looked at Dahlia, then at the guests, then at the rainwater beneath her shoes. "Enough to leave." She returned the microphone to the officiant. Security did not drag her. Marisol brought a coat and walked her to the side door away from the cameras. Greer followed. Portia remained to explain the unauthorized stream to attorneys. The glass doors closed. I turned to Dahlia. "Do you want to continue?" "Do you?" "Yes. And so do I." We returned to the platform. The officiant cleared his throat. "Where were we?" Jasper called from his seat. "At the part where nobody accepts objections from social media."
This time, everyone laughed. Dahlia placed the ring on my hand. I placed hers. We completed our vows without rushing through them to erase the interruption. When the officiant pronounced us married, Dahlia kissed me beneath a roof washed clean by rain. At the reception, I played the new song from the greenhouse on my guitar. Jasper stood beside the stage, holding a sign that read, "Definitely a guitar." My mother made him remove it before the second verse. Dahlia listened from the center of the room. The blush on her face crossed the bridge of her nose, which Marisol photographed with older sister efficiency. For once, the most discussed image from our wedding contained no scandal. It was simply my wife, trying and failing to hide how happy she was. We left before midnight through a private garden exit. The family planned an elaborate departure with vintage cars, but Dahlia and I chose her ordinary sedan because our honeymoon luggage was already in the trunk. "Are you all right?" She asked once we reached the quiet road.
"I should ask you." "You can ask after answering." I am relieved. Sad for the damage Camille keeps doing to herself. Angry at Portia. Certain about us. Dahlia kept her eyes on the road. "Your answer about the museum hurt." "I know. I am glad you did not lie. If Camille had chosen our relationship then, I would have honored the chance I offered. That does not mean she was a better choice than you. It means I do not rewrite my past to flatter the present." "And now?" "Now there is no decision between two women. There is the marriage I chose and the relationship I ended." Dahlia pulled into a scenic overlook above Alderhaven. City lights spread beneath the rain clouds. "Good," she said, "because I do not want to spend our wedding night pretending confidence. I was terrified you would step down from the platform and discover unfinished feelings." I stepped down to finish the sentence publicly. "You did."
I unfastened my seatbelt and kissed her. The kiss held no performance, only the delayed release of a day spent under observation. We stayed at the overlook until the windows fogged, and Jasper sent a message asking whether the sedan had broken down. Our honeymoon took place in a small coastal town, not a private island. We rented a house with a kitchen, walked along winter beaches, and turned off every work notification except emergency safety alerts. On the first morning, Dahlia woke before me and attempted breakfast. She burned the toast, overcooked the eggs, and produced coffee strong enough to remove paint. "You manage a civic development company," I said. "How did this pass inspection?" "The contractor was attractive and distracted the reviewer." "I am the reviewer." "Exactly." We ate it anyway.
Later, we bought ingredients from a local market and learned to cook fish from an elderly woman who rejected Dahlia's payment but accepted a promise that we would wash dishes.
We argued about navigation on a cliff trail, apologized before the argument became symbolic, and spent an entire rainy afternoon reading on opposite sides of the same sofa. The marriage did not feel like a corporate alliance. It felt ordinary in the best sense. Decisions, jokes, touch, silence, and two people adjusting without disappearing. On the fourth night, Dahlia found me awake by the window. "Camille?" she asked. The harbor inquiry. That was not my only question. I handed her my phone. A news report showed Camille entering the emergency Renshaw shareholder meeting in the red dress beneath a borrowed coat. The article described the wedding interruption and linked to fragments of Portia's stream. "I feel responsible for the public damage," I admitted. "You did not invite the stream." I answered her in front of 600 people. "She chose the audience. You answered without humiliation." The internet is doing the humiliating now. Dahlia sat beside me. We can request removal of reposted footage and issue a privacy statement that includes her. On our honeymoon? Marriage apparently did not cure either of us of solving problems. We drafted a joint request, asking media outlets not to monetize private distress, and stating that Camille's interruption had ended without violence or ongoing dispute. Marisol handled distribution. Several reputable outlets removed the video. Less reputable ones invented new versions, but at least we had not fed them. Camille saw our statement before entering the shareholder meeting. Grant Halberg and Dahlia Whitmore request that no party harass Ms. Renshaw or speculate about her mental health. Their wedding is complete, and they consider the personal matter closed. Closed. The word hurt. It also protected her from worse headlines. Inside the meeting, Victor demanded Camille resign for damaging the Renshaw name. She placed the hidden loan schedule and soil test metadata before the directors. "I will resign if the independent committee determines I violated my duties," she said. "You will step aside now while they investigate yours." Victor laughed. "You missed a board meeting to beg an ex-boyfriend at his wedding." "Yes, that was humiliating and wrong. It does not make your signatures disappear." Directors shifted. Victor had expected shame to silence her. By admitting the shame first, she removed his easiest weapon. "Price Capital will call our debt if I leave," he warned. "Then we enter supervised restructuring instead of concealing insolvency. Thousands lose jobs. Not if lenders accept the worker protection plan Grant's transition team proposed. You are using his plan after he rejected you. A sound plan remains sound." The board suspended Victor by 2 votes. He walked out promising to destroy everyone who betrayed him. Camille became interim chief executive of a company with empty reserves, frightened employees, and regulators at the door. For the first time, no boyfriend or childhood promise waited as an escape. She went to work. Our honeymoon lasted 10 days. On the final evening, Dahlia and I exchanged a second set of vows privately on the beach. The wedding vows had been beautiful but public. These were practical. I promised to tell her when work became a hiding place. She promised to ask for comfort before disguising it as strategy. I promised not to compare her care with Camille's failures. She promised not to make herself easy to love by agreeing with everything. We promised that no conflict would end with one person wondering whether the other had already left in secret. Then we walked back to the rented house with sand in our shoes and discovered the elderly cooking teacher had delivered a cake labeled, "For the serious people who burn toast." We ate half of it with 2 forks. Returning to Alderhaven brought no gentle transition. Horizon Harbor investigators had frozen Pryce financing. Construction companies demanded decisions. Renshaw Urban requested supervised protection from creditors. The contamination zone expanded after winter rain. I resumed work under an even stricter conflict plan. Because Camille led Renshaw, I could not participate in selecting its contracts. Because Dahlia and I were married, neither of us could review the other's companies. Independent public trustees took those decisions.
Victor called the safeguards cowardice. "Influence is only useful if you use it," he told a reporter. I answered once at a press conference. "Influence is most dangerous when people mistake access for entitlement. The harbor will be awarded through transparent review, including to a rival if that rival produces the safest plan." Nolan watched from the rear of the room. Pryce Capital had replaced him on official committees, but he continued operating through his grandfather. After the conference, he cornered me in a service corridor.
"You destroyed Camille's stability and now pretend to protect workers," he said. "Her father's concealed debt destroyed stability. You removed the software when they needed it, after repeated commercial offers and 4 months' notice. You always need paperwork to make revenge look clean. You always need ambiguity to make self-interest look romantic." His jaw tightened. "Why are you really here?" I asked. Nolan glanced toward the security camera. "My grandfather knows where the original soil cores are stored. He is willing to provide them if Halberg supports continued Pryce financing. That is evidence tampering and attempted leverage. It is a negotiation." "Then repeat it to investigators." He stepped closer. "You recorded our last call. Are you recording now?" "The building records every service corridor." Nolan looked at the camera again and left without another word. I delivered the footage to the oversight office. That should have ended his approach. Instead, it began the dangerous part. 2 nights later, a fire alarm activated at Renshaw Urban's abandoned harbor laboratory. The building contained archived soil cores, test ledgers, and physical samples from every early survey. Victor's team had scheduled the site for demolition, but the court froze all destruction once the investigation began. Camille received the alarm first. The security company reported that cameras went dark 11 minutes before smoke appeared. She called the fire service, the independent monitor, and her attorney. She did not call me. Then she saw Victor's access code in the entry log. Her father had entered the building with 2 former employees. Camille drove to the harbor while staying on the line with emergency dispatch. She arrived to find smoke leaking from a second-floor window and the fire doors chained from inside. Victor's car stood behind the loading dock. "Do not enter," the dispatcher told her. Camille obeyed. She circled the building, filmed every exit, and found one former employee climbing through a broken ground-floor window carrying a metal case. He ran when he saw her. She followed only far enough to record his face and license plate. Then, an explosion broke the rear windows. The harbor emergency network notified Halberg Union because our transit tunnel passed beneath the property. I was at home with Dahlia when the alert reached my phone. "Possible chemical fire above the eastern service line," I said. We were already putting on coats. Dahlia called Whitmore's environmental unit. I closed the tunnel remotely and ordered ventilation reversed so smoke could not enter passenger stations. Neither of us discussed whether this interrupted dinner. At the site, firefighters established a perimeter. Camille stood beside the command vehicle, giving them the original floor plans. When she saw me, alarm crossed her face. "You should not be here." "The tunnel is Halberg infrastructure. The chemical storage map is wrong. My father added a mezzanine laboratory 4 years ago." She drew the alteration on the hood of a truck. Dahlia compared it with plume readings. "If the solvent cabinet is here," Dahlia said, "water on the west room spreads contamination into the storm drain." The incident commander changed tactics. Foam units moved west. Whitmore crews blocked the drains. I sent a maintenance team into the tunnel to monitor structural heat. Camille remained outside, following orders, even though Victor had not emerged. "Do you think he's inside?" I asked. "His code opened the door. I do not know whether he left through the river exit." "Let the search team handle it." "I am." She sounded as though obedience required every muscle. Firefighters found Victor unconscious near the loading bay and carried him out. He had smoke inhalation and a broken wrist. The second former employee was found beside a fuel can. Arson became the working theory. Then heat sensors detected movement in the mezzanine. One archive technician had been working late when the doors were chained. She had taken shelter in a clean room, but the fire cut off the stairs.
The rescue team entered from the roof. I watched tunnel temperature readings rise past safe limits. A support column beneath the laboratory was transferring heat into the transit lining. "We need to release the east suppression reservoir," I told the commander. "It will cool the column without flooding the solvent room." "Manual valve?" The remote actuator failed. The valve sat inside a concrete service chamber connected to the tunnel, outside the burning laboratory, but within the collapse zone. A trained transit engineer prepared to enter. I knew the system better, but expertise did not make me invulnerable. "I will guide by radio," I said. Camille looked surprised, perhaps expecting the older version of me to prove devotion by personally taking every risk.
The engineer entered. I directed her through the chamber and she opened the reservoir. The column temperature began falling. The roof team reached the trap technician. For several minutes, the emergency appeared controlled. Then, a section of the loading canopy collapsed without warning. The impact struck the command vehicle and sent a suspended lighting arm swinging across the staging area. I heard Dahlia shout. Camille, standing closer, saw the metal arm first. She pushed me behind a concrete barrier. The arm struck her shoulder and knocked her down. This time, I did not walk away. I crawled to her, stabilized her neck, and checked her breathing. Blood ran from a cut near her collarbone. Her right arm lay at an unnatural angle. "Do not move," I said. Camille opened her eyes. "You are here. Paramedics are coming." "That is not what I meant." "I know. Save your breath." Dahlia knelt on Camille's other side with the trauma kit. No jealousy appeared in her hands. She cut fabric away from the wound, applied pressure, and spoke calmly until the paramedics arrived. Camille looked between us. "Of course she knows first aid." Dahlia almost smiled. "Occupational habit." The ambulance took Camille and Victor to different hospitals. The archive technician survived. Firefighters recovered the metal case beside the broken window. It contained the original soil cores and payment ledger. The fire was not a random accident. Victor had attempted to remove evidence, but one of his hired men set the blaze early to conceal his own theft. Pryce Capital Transfers funded both men. Nolan's grandfather was arrested before sunrise. Nolan disappeared. I went to the hospital after the site was secure. Dahlia came with me. Camille had a fractured shoulder, 3 cracked ribs, and 12 stitches. She was awake, furious at the hospital gown, and trying to sign board documents with her left hand. "Stop working," I said from the doorway. Camille stared at us. "You came. You saved me from a steel arm. Does that make us even? There is no ledger for a relationship. I am grateful. I will make sure your medical care and the incident report are handled correctly. It does not create a personal obligation." Her expression tightened, but she nodded. Dahlia placed a bag on the bedside table. "Clean clothes. Your assistant said the hospital cut the red dress and you refused everything from your father's house." Camille touched the bag. "Why are you helping me?" "Because you are injured. After I interrupted your wedding." "That changed my opinion of your judgment, not whether a broken shoulder hurts." Camille looked away. Tears reached her eyes more quickly than she could hide them. "I thought kindness meant Grant might return," she said. "Now both of you are kind, and somehow it hurts worse." I pulled a chair near the door, not the bed. "Kindness is not a romantic signal," I said. "You taught me how dangerous it is to treat one as the other." "I know." She told us about Victor's hidden loans and the arson alarm. She had copied every access log to the monitor before driving to the site. Her actions preserved the case and probably saved the archive technician. "Will the company survive?" she asked. "Not in its current form," Dahlia answered. "The worker protection trustee may separate healthy projects from the holding company." "My family loses control." "Yes." Camille closed her eyes. "Maybe control is what kept poisoning it." We stayed 20 minutes. Before leaving, I thanked her once more. "Grant," she said. I paused. "I'm going to stop asking." "Good."
Not because I stopped loving you. I understand. Because loving you does not make your answer less real. That was the first time she described love without using it to demand something. Dahlia and I walked to the parking garage in silence. Are you upset? I asked. About which part?
All of it. I was terrified when the arm fell. I am grateful Camille moved. I am jealous that crisis connects the two of you through a history I cannot enter. I am proud that you helped her without performing cruelty for my reassurance. That is a complicated answer. I contain multitudes. We reached the car. Dahlia did not start it. Do you still love her? She asked. No. I care whether she lives. I want her to become better. I do not want intimacy with her. Thank you. Do you need more than words? Tonight, yes. I pulled her into my arms. Dahlia buried her face against my shoulder and held on until the fear left her hands. At home, we did not discuss reports. We made soup, ate at the kitchen counter, and went to bed early. In darkness, Dahlia traced the station coordinates on my watch. Promise me something, she said. Ask first. Do not enter danger merely because you believe competence makes you responsible for every solution.
I stayed outside the valve chamber. I noticed. Then I promised to keep distinguishing leadership from personal sacrifice. Acceptable. The next morning, Beatrix Lane contacted the investigation team. After leaving Nolan's birthday, she had begun examining the staged relationships and Pryce family accounts. Two supposed girlfriends were actors paid through the same shell company that altered the soil tests. The fake relationships served more than avoiding Camille. Nolan's grandfather used them to move money, create compromising photographs, and pressure other families. Nolan knew the women were paid, but claimed he did not know the accounts concealed bribes. Beatrix had recorded a conversation in which Nolan explained his strategy to friends. I never planned to marry Camille, he said on the recording. I just needed her available until the Renshaw merger was useful. If I stayed single, our grandfathers would announce the engagement. A girlfriend buys time.
When one relationship ends, I start another before Camille's friends begin their countdown. Another man laughed. And Grant? He kept her calm. Best arrangement I never paid for. Camille and Portia had been outside the private room when the conversation occurred months earlier. Portia heard it. Camille had walked away before Nolan mentioned me. Portia never told her the rest because she feared Camille would abandon the group and expose how often they had encouraged the triangle for entertainment. The missing explanation from the original conflict finally became clear. Nolan did not repeatedly fall in and out of love. Some relationships were real, some were staged, and all were convenient barriers against an unwanted family plan. His cowardice kept Camille hopeful. Camille's cowardice kept me waiting. Their friends converted the harm into gossip. Investigators found Nolan in a private airfield lounge trying to leave the country. He was charged with evidence tampering and conspiracy. His grandfather faced additional fraud and bribery counts. Beatrix published the story only after prosecutors secured the records. She did not sensationalize Camille or identify the paid actresses. Her article focused on the financial system that rewarded personal manipulation. Camille read it from the hospital. Portia came to visit, carrying flowers and an apology. I should have told you what Nolan said, she began. Yes. I thought you would blame me. You made a choice to protect yourself. Can we repair this? Camille looked at the flowers. Not while you are asking me to decide before you explain the live stream. Portia admitted she had earned advertising money from clips of the fundraiser, Nolan's birthday, and the wedding. She told herself the money was incidental. In reality, drama around Camille had become part of her online identity. Delete the accounts, Camille said. That is my career. Then keep your career and lose access to my life. Portia left with the flowers. Greer visited later without a gift. She admitted the wedding advice had been selfish and offered to testify about Victor's pressure campaign. Camille did not forgive her immediately. She accepted the testimony. Recovery, she was learning,
did not require instant reconciliation. Renshaw Urban entered court-supervised restructuring. A worker committee received seats on the new board. Camille stepped down as interim chief executive while recovering, then applied for a role in the reorganized design division without demanding leadership. The trustee asked whether I supported her appointment. My support is irrelevant, I said. Evaluate her record under the same process as everyone else. Camille earned a 6-month probationary position based on her cooperation and prior project work. Her surname no longer guaranteed the top office. For the first time, she seemed relieved by that.
Dahlia and I returned to the burned laboratory 2 weeks later. The site would become a public evidence archive and environmental training center rather than luxury apartments. We walked beneath the damaged canopy wearing hard hats. "Here," Dahlia said, pointing to the concrete barrier. "This is where you landed. A memorable honeymoon return. Our marriage has poor respect for calendars." I took her hand. "Do you regret the speed?" She considered it. "I regret that other people assume speed means carelessness. I do not regret the decision. Do you?" "No." "Not even the red dress interruption?" "I would remove that from the highlight reel." Dahlia smiled. "Marisol already has." The burned structure creaked in the wind. Around us, engineers measured instead of guessed, recorded instead of concealed, and marked every dangerous section in bright paint. It looked like damage. It also looked like a place where rebuilding could begin. Rebuilding became harder when Victor Renshaw chose revenge over defense. From house arrest, he released selected private messages between Camille and me. The messages covered years of ordinary life: grocery lists, hospital updates, travel plans, and discussions about Renshaw projects. Edited together, they made it appear that I had used our relationship to obtain confidential company information before returning to Halberg Union. One headline called me the romantic spy of Horizon Harbor. Another claimed I married Dahlia to combine stolen Renshaw designs with Whitmore land. The claims were absurd. They were also specific enough to spread. Halberg Council advised silence until they completed authentication. Whitmore's board asked Dahlia to take temporary leave so the scandal would not affect investor confidence. The Harbor Oversight Chair scheduled an emergency ethics hearing. My first instinct was to issue every unedited message and bury Victor beneath context.
Dahlia stopped me.
"Those messages include medical details, employees' names, and private conversations that belong partly to Camille," she said. "Victor already violated the privacy. That does not give us permission to repeat it." I hated that she was right. "Then we give the full archive to investigators under seal," I said. "They certify the edits." "Yes." "And I step away from all harbor operations until the hearing." "Yes." "You do not need to take leave. The messages do not implicate you." Dahlia's expression cooled. "My board has governance concerns." "Based on a lie about me. Based on public confidence in our shared decisions." "I will handle the hearing." "There it is." "What?" "You are turning competence into a wall again. You decide to absorb the scandal, then expect me to feel protected rather than excluded." I almost argued. The words were accurate enough to remove the defense. "What would partnership look like?" I asked. "We each retain counsel. We share evidence. We decide public statements together. You do not instruct my board on how to manage me, and I do not ask your family to shield you." "Agreed. Also, you sleep." "That seems unrelated." "You color-coded the leaked messages at 4 in the morning. Color improves chronology." "Bed." We went to bed. The next day, Camille requested permission to intervene. Victor had obtained the messages from an old backup server she failed to secure. She offered the original export and a sworn explanation of every business exchange. Our attorneys advised accepting the evidence but avoiding direct coordination. Camille submitted it independently. Her statement began with an admission. Grant Halberg and I shared a personal relationship from age 22 to 29. During that time, I repeatedly requested his professional help for Renshaw Urban. He provided analysis, often without payment, because I described the company as part of our future.
He did not request confidential information for Halberg Union. He actively discouraged me from sending materials unrelated to his assignments. My father now presents Grant's unpaid labor as espionage because acknowledging the labor would expose how Renshaw benefited from it. She attached invoices the board refused, model logs showing dates, and messages in which I told Victor not to proceed with Southbank. Camille did not minimize her role. I accepted the benefit and failed to insist on fair compensation. That failure was personal and professional. It should not be converted into a false allegation against Grant or his wife. The statement changed public discussion. Some people accused her of protecting me out of lingering love. Others recognized evidence when they saw it. At the ethics hearing, Victor appeared by video. His attorney argued that I had concealed my Halberg identity to infiltrate regional competitors. I answered under oath.
I used my full legal name on taxes, licenses, contracts, and company registration. Hale Advisory was named from my mother's family, not a false identity. Renshaw Urban's background check identified my parents in the first year. Victor signed it. The chair displayed the signature. Victor claimed he had not read the attachment. Failure to read does not transform disclosure into concealment, Dahlia said from the witness table. She testified after me because Whitmore's environmental review relied on my model. She explained every control separating our marriage from business decisions. A council member asked, "Mrs. Halberg, did your relationship influence your decision to expose the falsified soil report?" "Yes," Dahlia said. The room stirred. "Explain." "My relationship with Grant reinforced that hiding a conflict causes greater harm than admitting it. The evidence itself determined the disclosure. Influence is not automatically corruption. Concealed influence is the danger." She could have delivered a safer denial. Instead, she gave the accurate answer. The council cleared us of misconduct and recommended our conflict system as a model for the project. Outside, reporters shouted questions about the wedding, Camille, and whether our marriage would survive. Dahlia took the microphone first. "We attended an ethics hearing, not a relationship contest. The evidence is public. Our marriage is private." We left without feeding the spectacle. That night, I found Dahlia sitting on the bathroom floor with her back against the tub. The hearing had ended hours earlier. She was still wearing her suit. "What happened?" "Nothing. Try again." She held up a small plastic test. For a moment, I did not understand. Then I saw the result. Positive. My mind jumped through joy, fear, schedules, medical appointments, the unfinished harbor, and every possible disaster a person could invent in 3 seconds. I sat beside her. "How do you feel?" I asked. Dahlia laughed shakily. "Thank you for not asking whether I am sure." "Are you happy?" "Yes, and terrified. We discussed children as a future possibility, not this year." "Do you want this pregnancy?" "I think I do. I need a doctor before I trust a piece of plastic with our lives." "Then we make an appointment. No families until you are ready. No company announcements ever." "Your mother will know by looking at me." "My mother believes every yawn is pregnancy." "This time she may be accurate." I took Dahlia's hand. "I am happy. I am also frightened. Neither feeling requires a decision tonight beyond medical care and sleep." She rested her head on my shoulder. The doctor confirmed the pregnancy 2 days later. Everything appeared healthy, but early. Dahlia chose to tell Marisol and our parents after the first scan. Joanna cried. Edmund sat down abruptly. Dahlia's father opened an investment account before anyone stopped him. Marisol confiscated his phone and reminded both families that the child was not a merger project. We did not change our work immediately. We did change the annual vacation clause into a broader rule about health appointments, rest, and refusing to treat exhaustion as virtue. The pregnancy gave Victor's media campaign a new target once a clinic employee leaked the appointment. Tabloids accused us of staging the wedding because Dahlia was pregnant. The dates disproved the claim. Facts did not slow photographs of strangers counting weeks.
Dahlia wanted to ignore it. I wanted to prosecute every outlet. We compromised by taking action only against the clinic breach and asking regulators to protect patient records. Our child will be born into attention, Dahlia said. We cannot win by fighting every person who looks. We can punish the ones who steal medical data. That one, yes. The employee lost access and faced charges. The clinic adopted stronger controls.
We released no pregnancy statement. Camille learned from the tabloid and sent no message. Instead, she instructed Renshaw communications staff not to answer questions and fired a contractor who offered to circulate the rumor that Dahlia had trapped me. We are not rebuilding this company using another woman's body as strategy, she told the team. That sentence reached Dahlia through the trustee. She is changing, Dahlia said. Yes. Does it make you proud? A little. Me too. There was no threat in acknowledging another person's growth. Horizon Harbor entered final design selection in spring. 4 consortiums remained. The reorganized Renshaw Design Division submitted the only plan that converted the contaminated eastern terminal into wetlands rather than attempting expensive residential cleanup. Camille led the design team, but signed no pricing decisions. Halberg Union supported a rival transit layout. Whitmore Civic supported an independent environmental group. None of us could predict which combination the public trustees would select. The final presentation would occur at the old Customs Hall before workers, residents, and press. 3 days before it, Greer brought Camille a package found in Victor's former office. Inside were copies of the real soil report, photographs of cash payments, and a handwritten list of council members targeted for bribery. One name was marked G. H. Grant Halberg. Beside my initials, Victor had written, "Used daughter, emotional debt after accident." He planned to exploit Camille's injury to create the appearance that I owed her the contract. "This can destroy the Renshaw bid," Greer said. "It should be disclosed." "The notes are his, not ours. If you submit them now, trustees may disqualify the whole design and hundreds of employees lose the project." Camille read the worker names attached to the proposal. People who had accepted reduced salaries during restructuring. Young architects whose careers had nothing to do with Victor. "If we hide it and win, the design is poisoned," she said. "If we disclose it, we may not survive." Camille remembered every person who had justified concealment as protection. Nolan protected her from a rejection. Victor protected employees from debt. She protected me from a truth she believed would hurt. "Send it to the monitor," she said. The trustees suspended Renshaw's presentation while investigators authenticated the notes. Employees reacted with anger. Several accused Camille of sacrificing them to cleanse her conscience. She did not tell them to be grateful for honesty. "You have a right to be afraid," she said at a staff meeting. "I made the disclosure because our last leadership kept deciding that your jobs justified secret risks you would eventually carry. The monitor will decide whether the current team is implicated. If we are removed, I will support transferring the plan and preserving your employment with another consortium." One architect asked, "Even if another company gets credit?" Credit is not worth rebuilding the same system. The monitor found no contact between Victor and the current bid team. Because Camille disclosed the notes immediately, Renshaw remained eligible under additional supervision. The night before the presentation, Nolan escaped pre-trial monitoring. His ankle transmitter was found beside a highway drainage ditch. A car registered to a Pryce shell company entered Alderhaven at midnight. Police warned everyone named in Victor's bribery notes. Dahlia wanted me to skip the Customs Hall event. "That would reward the threat," I said. "Attending does not prove courage. I am responsible for the transit safety presentation. Another executive can deliver it." "Yes." The answer surprised both of us. I thought about the valve chamber and my promise not to confuse competence with personal sacrifice. "I can appear remotely," I said. "Security can focus on workers and residents instead of protecting me." Dahlia exhaled. "Thank you. You should stay home too. My presentation has a substitute. Then we both stay."
We informed the trustees and prepared a secure video feed from Halberg headquarters. Nolan had expected me to insist on standing in the center of the room. Changing that decision ruined his plan. At 10 the next morning, the customs hall filled with 500 residents, engineers, union representatives, and journalists. Security checked every badge twice. Police searched vehicles and closed the river entrance. Camille attended because the monitor required each design lead in person. Her shoulder had healed enough to remove the brace, but she still moved carefully. Greer accompanied her as a witness coordinator. Portia was not accredited.
From Halberg headquarters, Dahlia and I watched 6 security feeds beside our attorneys and the transit substitute. The remote arrangement felt cowardly for approximately 3 minutes. Then a camera showed families entering with children, and I remembered courage was not measured by how much security one person consumed. The first presentation began without incident. Halfway through the second, I noticed a maintenance worker adjust the same ventilation panel twice. Camera 4, I told security. Zoom on the East Gallery. The worker wore a cap and respirator. His badge identified him as Owen Pike, an employee who had called in sick that morning. Possible impersonation, the security chief said. Team moving. The worker disappeared through a service door before they reached him. Dahlia enlarged the hall system's map. That corridor leads to projection control in the archive room.
The original evidence cores were not stored there, but certified copies and presentation files were. Destroying them would not erase the case. It could create enough panic to discredit the process. Pause the event, I said. The oversight chair hesitated. We have no confirmed threat. You have a false badge inside a public hall during an active fugitive search. She ordered a controlled recess. Camille stood near the stage when the lights went out. Emergency lamps activated red. Fire doors closed around the main hall. A recorded evacuation message directed everyone toward the east exits. Dahlia leaned toward the screen. Those exits lead toward the service corridor. The message is false, I said. Keep people in place until security opens the west doors. Our substitute took the stage with a battery-powered microphone. Remain where you are. There is no confirmed fire. Staff will open the western exits manually. The false message grew louder, attempting to override him.
Residents began moving. Camille climbed onto the stage. Renshaw team, hold your rows, she called. Architects, form a line along the west aisle. Do not follow the recording.
Her employees obeyed. Other groups followed their example. Smoke appeared near the east gallery. Not fire smoke. Theater smoke from presentation equipment chosen to make the false alarm believable. Security opened the west doors. People evacuated in steady lines. Police entered through the loading bay. Then Camille disappeared from camera 5. Greer saw her follow a figure into the backstage corridor. Why? Dahlia demanded. Greer grabbed a radio. She recognized Nolan. I closed my eyes for one angry second. Camille had spent years moving toward Nolan whenever he appeared. Even now, under threat, the habit survived. But the reason was different. Nolan carried a hard drive taken from the archive room. Camille believed it contained the only accessible copy of the worker transition guarantees.
She followed to prevent him from destroying it. The backstage camera showed Nolan remove his respirator. He had dyed his hair and lost weight during the weeks of investigation. Desperation had stripped away the charm he once used as a shield. Camille stopped 10 feet away. Put down the drive, she said. Tell your people to clear the river exit. The police control it. You can still help me. Why would I? Nolan laughed. Because all this began with us. No, it began with fraud. Grant convinced you of that. Grant is not here. Nolan looked toward the stage, finally realizing the person he came to confront had appeared only on a screen. He hid. He chose not to place a target inside a crowded building. That is what responsibility looks like. The answer angered Nolan more than an insult. He pulled a flare gun from beneath his jacket and aimed at the ceiling. One shot could ignite old timber above the curtains. Police in the adjacent corridor could see him through camera feed, but the service door was wired to an improvised trigger. Forcing it might fire the flare. I spoke through the backstage intercom. "Nolan, the drive contains no unique evidence. Everything is mirrored off-site." His head snapped toward the speaker. "You are here." Remotely. "Come to the hall." "No." "Afraid?" "Yes. Sensible people become afraid when a fugitive points a weapon near 500 civilians." He had prepared for pride. Admitting fear gave him nothing to attack. "You took everything," he said. "Camille, the harbor, the Whitmores, even my family's reputation." "Camille was never yours. The harbor belongs to the public. Your family damaged its own reputation." "You think paperwork makes you clean?" "Put down the flare and test that argument in court." Nolan turned toward Camille. "If we leave together, our families can still combine their shares. The promise can finally mean something."
For years, those were the words she wanted more than any others. Now they arrived from a frightened man holding stolen data and a weapon.
Camille started laughing. Nolan's face tightened. "What is funny?" "I destroyed a good relationship waiting for you to say that. And now that you have, I would rather marry the fire inspector." Even Dahlia laughed beside me. Camille took one step closer. "You do not love me. You love exits. I was one. Your girlfriends were others. Grant was useful because he kept me occupied. Beatrix was useful because she made you look honest. Now you want our family shares because the airport is closed. You are in no position to judge anyone's love." "I know. That is why I finally recognize yours." She lifted her empty hands. "The worker guarantees are duplicated. The evidence is duplicated. I am not your hostage because Grant will not trade the law from me, and I would not ask him to." Nolan moved the flare toward her. Dahlia touched the building's schematic. "The stage range system." The customs hall used overhead water lines for theatrical events. They were separate from fire suppression and could be activated from Halberg's presentation controls. "It will soak the floor near the electrical trigger," an engineer warned. "Can we isolate the corridor circuit?" I asked. "Already disconnected," security replied. Dahlia entered the control command. Rain poured over the backstage corridor. Nolan flinched. The flare gun became wet, but remained dangerous. Camille dropped and swept a rolling equipment case into his knees. He fired as he fell. The flare struck the wet brick wall and extinguished before reaching the curtain. Police breached the service door. The improvised trigger discharged harmlessly into an isolated circuit. Officers restrained Nolan. Camille stayed on the floor, breathing hard, until Greer reached her. "The drive," she said. It had cracked beneath the equipment case.
Greer began laughing.
"You told him it was duplicated." "I hoped Grant had duplicated it." "We did," I said through the intercom. Camille looked up at the camera. "Good." No intimate thank you passed between us. None was needed. The hall reopened after bomb technicians cleared it. The oversight chair offered to postpone the presentations. Residents objected. They had evacuated safely, watched a fugitive arrested, and waited months for decisions affecting their homes. They wanted the process completed in daylight, with every camera recording. The chair agreed. Camille changed into a dry jacket and presented Renshaw's wetlands plan. She did not mention Nolan or ask for sympathy. When trustees questioned the bribery note, she explained the disclosure and supervision. When a worker challenged her family's history, she did not hide behind restructuring. "The old Renshaw company failed because leaders treated transparency as weakness," she said. "This design should be selected only if the plan, team, and safeguards are stronger than the alternatives. My regret is not a qualification." The other consortiums presented. Dahlia and I watched remotely, offering no private comments to trustees. After 6 hours, the board announced a combined award. Renshaw's design division would lead the wetlands conversion under worker board control. Halberg's rival would construct transit. An independent environmental cooperative would manage remediation. Whitmore Civic would provide public reporting without profit on legacy test sites. No family won everything. The project did.
Renshaw employees cried in the hall. Camille did not stand on stage alone. She brought the junior architects, labor representatives, and environmental scientists beside her. Victor watched the announcement from detention. His control ended without the company dying, disproving the threat he had used for years. Nolan returned to custody with additional charges.
At his arraignment, he attempted to blame his grandfather, Victor, Camille, me, and the pressure of family expectations. The judge listened, then denied release. Beatrix published a follow-up titled, "An Heir is Still Responsible for His Choices." It became the most read article of her career. At home, Dahlia closed the event stream and placed both hands over her stomach. The pregnancy was not yet visible, but the gesture had become instinctive. "We helped activate indoor rain at a public hearing," she said. "Our child will assume that is normal governance. We should provide calmer examples. Tomorrow." We ate reheated soup and watched a terrible comedy. Halfway through, Dahlia fell asleep against me. I lowered the volume and looked around the apartment we had chosen together after the wedding. The furniture belonged to both of us. Photographs remained visible regardless of visitors. 2 work desks occupied opposite walls, equal in size and equally messy.
My guitar stood beside Dahlia's stack of soil reports.
Nothing in the room waited for another person's answer. The following week, Camille requested a meeting with Dahlia, not with me. Dahlia asked whether I was comfortable. I said the decision belonged to them, then went to lunch with Jasper rather than hovering nearby. Camille met Dahlia in the Whitmore greenhouse. She carried a flat package and no red dress. "This belonged to Grant," she said. Inside was a photograph from my university concert. Jasper and I stood on stage. I held a guitar. Camille had written on the back years ago, "The night I met the person who changed my life." "Why give it to me?" Dahlia asked. "I found it while clearing the apartment. Grant said to divide or donate everything. The photograph is his history, but I do not think I should decide whether he wants it." "You could send it through council." "I also came to apologize to you without an audience. I treated your wedding like the final scene of my relationship. It was the beginning of yours. I am sorry." Dahlia accepted the apology, but did not erase the boundary. "Thank you. I hope your recovery continues. We will not become friends simply because the conflict ended." "I know." Camille glanced around the greenhouse. "He played a new song here, didn't he?" Dahlia became cautious. "How do you know?" "The wedding performance. Grant never repeats music unless it belongs to a place." 7 years did contain a language Dahlia did not speak. Camille smiled sadly. "You will learn your own." She left the photograph and walked away. When Dahlia showed it to me, I kept it. Not in our bedroom and not hidden. It joined a box of university memories in the study. "Does it hurt?" she asked. "Less than it used to." "Do you want to destroy it?" "No. Healing is not an evidence purge." I took my guitar and played the greenhouse song for her again. This time, Dahlia sang badly over the final chorus. It became better because of it. The harbor victory did not end our problems. It changed them into slower ones. Construction began under public observation. Every soil result appeared online within 24 hours. Residents held veto power over major design changes. Worker representatives reviewed safety budgets. Meetings lasted twice as long and produced half as many elegant speeches. They also produced trust. Renshaw's new design division removed the family name after an employee vote. The company became Common Ground Studio. Camille supported the change even though it erased the last corporate inheritance she might have recovered. "A name should describe who carries the work," she told the board, "not who once owned the building." She remained a senior project architect. No private office, no driver, no assistants assigned to manage her moods. She arrived early, documented decisions, and left when her hours ended because the therapist treating her shoulder also asked difficult questions about the rest of her life. Portia refused to delete her profitable accounts.
The unauthorized wedding stream became evidence in a civil privacy case. She settled with the Glasshouse staff, donated the revenue, and posted an apology that began sincerely before turning into a brand announcement. Camille blocked the account. Greer testified against Victor and Nolan. She and Camille spoke occasionally, in public places, and without returning to automatic friendship. Victor's criminal trial began in summer. Prosecutors charged him with fraud, arson conspiracy, obstruction, and concealed lending. His defense argued that every action protected Renshaw employees from a hostile market. Workers testified that he cut safety budgets while preserving family dividends.
The archive technician rescued from the laboratory described waking behind chained fire doors. Camille testified for 2 days. Victor watched his daughter from the defense table with an expression she once would have interpreted as disappointment. Now she recognized calculation. "Did you disclose company records to Grant Halberg?" his attorney asked. "Only materials connected to assignments he was authorized to perform. Did your personal relationship influence those assignments?" "Yes. I asked for more help than I would have requested from another consultant, and the company paid less because I allowed executives to call his work personal support." So Mr. Halberg benefited from intimate access. Renshaw benefited. That is why his license logs support the prosecution. The attorney displayed a photograph of Camille running into our wedding. "You were emotionally unstable after Mr. Halberg left, correct?" "I behaved badly."
Badly enough to fabricate accusations against your father? Camille looked at the jury. If embarrassment made evidence false, no wealthy family would ever be convicted. The judge instructed the jury to ignore laughter. Victor offered Camille a deal during a recess. If she softened testimony, he would transfer overseas properties and enough money to restore her previous life. "Which previous life?" she asked. "The one built on hidden loans, or the one built on waiting? You are throwing away your birthright for people who will never accept you again. A birthright that requires silence is a leash." She returned to the witness stand. "I testified only about models, contracts, and warnings." Victor's attorney tried to provoke personal anger. "You expect this court to believe you hold no resentment toward the woman who humiliated you?" "Resentment does not alter a timestamp." "Isn't destroying her father's company the perfect revenge?" The Healthy Project survived under employee ownership. Victor's control did not. If those are identical to you, the problem is your definition of company. Dahlia sat behind the prosecution rail. Her pregnancy was visible now, and cameras repeatedly turned toward her despite courtroom rules. She ignored them and annotated the engineering exhibits. Victor was convicted on every major count. The judge later imposed a long prison term and restitution that consumed most concealed assets. Some properties funded worker pensions. Others paid environmental cleanup. Nolan accepted a plea after Beatrix's recordings and airfield evidence destroyed his defense. He admitted evidence tampering, financial conspiracy, and the customs hall threat. His sentence was shorter than Victor's, but long enough to remove the word temporary from consequence. At sentencing, Nolan asked to address Camille. "I did care about you," he said. "I was afraid of being forced into a life I did not choose." Camille answered only because the court allowed victims to respond. "You had the right to refuse marriage. You did not have the right to preserve your freedom by feeding my hope. I understand your fear. I do not carry it for you anymore." He looked toward me as if expecting rivalry. I was checking whether Dahlia needed water. The triangle that had organized Nolan's ego no longer existed. Our personal challenge arrived during the 7th month of pregnancy. Dahlia's blood pressure rose at a routine appointment. The doctor ordered reduced travel, fewer site visits, and immediate monitoring for warning signs. Dahlia agreed in the clinic. At home, she opened her calendar and tried to move 3 harbor inspections to the following week. I closed the laptop. The doctor said fewer site visits. Fewer is not 0. Your pressure was dangerous. It is being monitored. You are not going to an active construction zone. The word "not" landed between us. Dahlia's eyes cooled. "You may express fear. You may ask. You may not issue permission regarding my work. I am your husband and the child's father. Both roles give you a voice, not ownership. I heard myself and disliked the sound. The instinct came from care, but Camille's story had taught me that motives did not erase behavior. You are right, I said. Dahlia's anger paused. I am frightened, I continued. The phrase dangerous blood pressure has occupied every part of my brain. I want you to avoid the sight. I should not have presented that desire as an order. She sat back. I am frightened too. Work is the place where I know how to be useful. Rest makes me feel like a body everyone is waiting to produce something. We called the doctor together and asked for specific limits. Then Dahlia spoke with her team. The active inspections moved to another director. She retained remote design reviews and one controlled visit with medical clearance.
I promise not to turn every cup of coffee into a surveillance event. I failed twice in the first week. How is your head? I asked one morning. Attached. Any visual changes? Only the appearance of an anxious man following me with a blood pressure cuff. I put the cuff away. She kissed my cheek. Ask once. I will report changes. We created a check-in plan and taped it inside a cabinet so my fear did not invent new rules each hour. My parents required boundaries too. Joanna began sending baby furniture to our apartment. Edmund ordered a custom cradle with the Halberg emblem carved into every side. Dahlia's father reserved 3 schools before the child was born. We invited everyone to dinner. The baby will not be a corporate heir at birth, Dahlia said. No logos, school contracts, public photographs, or trust announcements without our agreement. Joanna looked wounded. The blanket has one tiny train. One tiny train becomes a newspaper headline about succession, I said. Edmund nodded slowly. They are right. He had grown up as an heir before he became a father. Distinguishing the roles took effort. The emblem cradle went to a Halberg museum. We bought a plain wooden one from the same craftswoman who made Dahlia's ring. At 34 weeks, Dahlia developed a severe headache during a remote harbor meeting. She reported it immediately. Her blood pressure had climbed again. We went to the hospital. Doctors admitted her for observation, then decided delivery was safer than waiting. The room filled with consent forms, monitors, specialists, and the frightening efficiency of people who understood risks we could not control. Dahlia gripped my hand. This was not on the calendar. You have always disrespected my scheduling software. True. Our daughter arrived small, furious, and breathing on her own. We named her Livia, a name chosen from no family list. She spent 2 weeks in neonatal care. Dahlia recovered slowly. I learned that an operations plan could not make a premature infant gain weight faster. All I could do was show up, listen, feed Dahlia when she forgot, and hold Livia through the incubator openings when nurses allowed it. The first time I held her against my chest, every boardroom skill became irrelevant. She weighed less than a stack of project reports and still rearranged the scale of the world. Dahlia watched from the hospital bed. You are crying, she said. Air quality. In the neonatal unit? Highly emotional filtration system. She laughed carefully because her stitches hurt. Camille sent a card through Marisol. No flowers, cameras, or request to visit. Welcome, Livia. May every promise in your life be one you are free to choose. Dahlia placed it in the keepsake box. Are you sure? I asked. It is a good wish. 2 weeks later, we brought Livia home. Jasper decorated the apartment with a banner reading, Provisional Resident Approved. Marisol replaced it with one that did not sound like an audit. That first night, Livia slept for 47 minutes at a time. At 4 in the morning, Dahlia and I sat on the kitchen floor sharing cold toast while the baby finally rested in the plain cradle. Most beautiful goddess in Alderhaven, I whispered, defeated by someone who cannot lift her own head. Dahlia leaned against me.
Do not let the newspapers hear you call me that. They already do. Their standards have improved. Livia is clearly more beautiful. We watched our daughter breathe. There was no grand music, no corporate announcement, no ex arriving at the door. Only a family learning its shape in the quiet. Parental leave forced both of us to test our promises. I took 12 weeks, the longest leave any Halberg executive had taken. Several directors worried it signaled weakness.
Edmund responded by taking every Friday off to visit his granddaughter, turning weakness into policy. Dahlia delegated more slowly. She reviewed emails during midnight feedings until I reminded her that remote work was still work. "You checked project messages yesterday," she said. I was weak. "Then we are equally corrupt." We placed our phones in a kitchen drawer for 2 hours each evening. Livia did not care about our titles. She cared about warmth, milk, movement, and whether someone responded when she cried. Her priorities exposed adult drama as an expensive hobby. When we finally returned to the harbor site, construction had transformed the burned laboratory. The damaged canopy remained as part of a memorial to workers harmed by concealed decisions. New classrooms surrounded it. Wetland channels filtered runoff where towers had once been planned. Camille led a public tour. She saw Livia in Dahlia's arms and stopped for one brief second. Then she greeted us professionally. "The western boardwalk is stroller accessible," she said. "We tested the slope yesterday." "Occupational habit?" Dahlia asked. Camille smiled. "Learned behavior." We joined the tour among residents. No secret conversation followed. No photograph framed Camille as the abandoned woman watching a perfect family. She was the architect explaining water gardens to school children. That identity belonged to her, not to our ending. 2 years passed. Horizon Harbor grew from hearings and contaminated soil into a living district. Wetlands replaced the poisoned eastern terminal. Electric trams crossed the old freight route. Apartment buildings reserved half their units for families displaced by earlier speculation. The public archive displayed every version of the soil reports, including the falsified one, so future students could see how professional language hid a dangerous decision.
The project exceeded its original schedule by 8 months and finished under budget because transparent problems were cheaper than secret emergencies. Common Ground Studio earned additional public contracts without using Camille's family name. She became design director after a vote by employees and worker board representatives. The promotion occurred 18 months after restructuring, long enough that no one could call it inherited. She sold the Grayford apartment. Before closing, Camille walked through the rooms alone. The dining table scratch from our first year remained. A faint square on the wall marked where our travel photograph once hung. The kitchen cabinet still contained the mug I disliked but refused to discard because she bought it on our first trip. She placed the mug in a donation box. My old anniversary ring went to an auction funding apprenticeships for designers from low-income families. She did not attach our names to the listing.
The money supported 7 students. Nolan sent letters from prison. The first blamed his grandfather, the second apologized, the third described a fantasy in which he and Camille finally honored the promise after his release. She returned every letter unopened after the first 2. His rehabilitation did not require her audience. Portia completed the privacy settlement and rebuilt her channel around fashion reviews. She occasionally posted vague videos about losing fake friends. Camille never responded. Greer and Camille developed a cautious friendship based on actual plans rather than shared gossip. They met once a month, and either could cancel without creating a loyalty trial. The fire inspector from the laboratory asked Camille to coffee. She almost refused because the invitation arrived near Nolan's birthday, and she distrusted the symbolism. Then she laughed at herself and asked the inspector one direct question. "Is this professional or a date?" "A date," he said. "If you prefer professional, I will send the safety report instead." Camille agreed to coffee. It did not become instant love. There was no promise attached to an age and no board waiting for a merger. They went on 3 dates, paused when work became intense, and resumed after discussing it.
Whether the relationship lasted mattered less than the fact that both people knew which relationship they were in. Our marriage also continued without becoming effortless. Dahlia and I argued about work, parenting, privacy, and whose turn it was to replace the diaper bag supplies. I sometimes tried to solve emotions before listening. She sometimes produced a complete plan without revealing she needed help. We recognized the patterns earlier each time. On our second anniversary, Dahlia forgot the restaurant reservation because a coastal flood warning activated. I found her in the emergency office wearing the earrings she chose for dinner and directing shelter maps.
I am sorry, she said before I spoke. The coast is underwater.
Partially.
A strong scheduling conflict.
I ordered food for the team. We celebrated at midnight over paper containers while Livia slept at Marisol's house. On our third anniversary, I was the one who forgot. Dahlia arrived at a rail meeting with Livia holding a card covered in purple handprints. "Daddy forgot the flowers," our daughter announced to the entire executive board. She had inherited direct communication. I adjourned the meeting, bought flowers from the station stall, and did not claim a transport emergency. Dahlia made me retell the story at dinner because my embarrassment improved with repetition. Joanna became a grandmother who still believed one toy train was appropriate for every developmental stage. Edmund taught Livia to identify construction equipment before colors. Dahlia's father stopped reserving schools and started building wooden puzzles.
Marisol remained the only adult Livia obeyed immediately, a power no one understood. Jasper married a documentary editor after she corrected the captions on his engineering videos. At his wedding, he placed a sign beside the musicians. All instruments verified. I considered objecting, then played guitar anyway. The opening ceremony for Horizon Harbor took place 3 years after my wedding. Residents, workers, designers, and investigators gathered on the restored Customs Plaza. No private family held the central stage. Names of injured workers appeared above the company logos. Dahlia spoke about environmental accountability. Camille described the wetlands design. A labor representative explained the ownership structure. I presented the transit network in 4 minutes because Livia had informed me long speeches were boring. Afterward, Camille approached while Dahlia and I watched children race along the boardwalk. "The last water test passed," she said. I saw. "My team wants to place the original risk model warning in the archive. It has your Hale advisory signature. Include the board response beside it. Already planned." We stood without hostility or intimacy. The distance between us no longer required maintenance. "I used to imagine this project would bring you back," Camille said. "Then I imagined completing it would prove I no longer cared. Both ideas kept making my work about you." "What is it about now?" She looked toward the wetland where birds had begun nesting. "Water, mostly." "Good answer." "And people." "Even better." Dahlia joined us, carrying Livia, who had lost one shoe. Camille crouched and retrieved it from beneath a bench. "Thank you," Livia said with serious dignity. "You are welcome." Our daughter studied Camille. "Mom says you designed the frog place." "Part of it. There are no frogs." "They have not moved in yet. You should invite them." Camille promised to consider a formal frog invitation. The exchange held no hidden tragedy. Livia did not represent the child Camille might have had with me. She was herself. Camille was not a defeated ex standing outside our happiness. She was an architect, being criticized by a 3-year-old stakeholder. When she left to rejoin her team, Dahlia took my arm. "How do you feel?" she asked. Proud of the project. Proud of her, carefully. More concerned about the missing shoe. "Livia has removed it again." Our daughter was attempting to float the shoe in a drainage channel. We rescued it before the opening ceremony became a footwear recovery operation. That evening, the 3 of us walked through the public archive. One exhibit covered the corporate scandal. It included no wedding footage. The curators treated personal relationships only where they affected governance, unpaid consulting, hidden influence, and disclosure controls.
Another exhibit explained how the worker board preserved jobs during restructuring. A third showed the fire response and the archive technician's rescue. History looked different when it centered consequences rather than gossip. At the final display, visitors could write one decision they wished institutions handled more honestly. Livia drew a circle. Dahlia wrote, "Bad news should travel faster than reputation management." I wrote, "Loyalty is not consent to endless uncertainty." We placed the cards on the wall. Outside, harbor lights reflected across clean water. The same place where families once planned towers on poisoned ground now held reeds, trams, schools, and ordinary apartments. "Worth the delay?" Dahlia asked. "Which delay?" "The project, not the wedding." "Both reached the correct result?" "Diplomatic." "Accurate." Livia demanded to ride the tram. We boarded the final loop and sat beside workers going home after the ceremony. Nobody offered us a private carriage. Dahlia preferred it that way. As the tram crossed the harbor, I thought about the version of success people told after the fundraiser. A neglected boyfriend discovered he was rich, returned home, and replaced the woman who hurt him with someone more beautiful. That version was simple, satisfying, and wrong. I had not gained intelligence with an inheritance. I had used intelligence badly when I applied it to everyone except my own boundaries. Dahlia was not a reward for leaving Camille. She was a person who challenged me, frightened me, loved me, and expected partnership in return. Camille was not punished by losing access to wealth. Her real consequence was facing choices without a safety net and repairing what she could. Even Nolan's story was not that he dated too many women and selected the wrong one. He treated other people as shields against a decision he was afraid to state. The law punished the crimes. Life punished the ambiguity by eventually making every relationship impossible to trust. The tram reached the station where Dahlia and I first met. The repaired ramp remained in service. A small plaque described the safety upgrade. It did not mention our proposal because Dahlia had vetoed my mother's draft. "Too sentimental," she had said. "You cried for 9 minutes." Private data. We stepped onto the platform. Livia ran ahead between us, one hand holding mine and the other holding Dahlia's. For once, every connection led in the same direction because nobody was secretly waiting to turn back. The story might have ended there if the world knew how to leave a useful lesson alone. A production company contacted us after the harbor opening. It wanted to make a documentary about the wedding of the century. The proposal described me as a hidden prince, Camille as the regretful socialite, and Dahlia as the beautiful goddess who replaced her. Dahlia read the treatment twice. "Apparently, I have no profession," she said. "I stand at the altar and glow."
An efficient schedule. Camille exists only to cry in red. And I develop a brain after removing a ring. We declined. Instead, Beatrix produced a short public interest film about Horizon Harbor. It focused on falsified testing, worker ownership, environmental recovery, and conflict disclosure. Camille agreed to an interview only if the wedding was excluded. I discussed unpaid professional labor without describing private messages. Dahlia explained why good governance required people to admit influence rather than claim they had none. The film was less sensational and more useful. Universities began showing it in engineering and ethics courses. One student asked during a panel whether I regretted staying with Camille so long. "Regret is easy when you know the ending," I answered. At the time, I believed patience honored commitment. The mistake was not loving someone for 7 years. It was accepting uncertainty after I had enough information to ask for a clear choice. Another asked Dahlia whether she worried I had married too quickly.
"Of course," she said. "We handled the worry by examining decisions rather than pretending the feeling was romantic destiny." Camille received the most difficult question. "When did you know you lost him?" The audience expected her to say the wedding, the breakup call, or the courthouse rejection. "The museum," she replied. "I knew when Grant asked me to choose without waiting for Nolan's answer. I simply spent months arguing with knowledge." No one applauded the pain. They listened. After the panel, Camille introduced Dahlia and me to the fire inspector she was dating. His name was Aaron Bell, a patient man with a dry sense of humor and no family merger plan. Camille made the introduction without watching my reaction. That detail told me more than any speech. "We are taking it slowly," she said. Aaron added, "She made me define slowly in calendar days." "Ambiguity has a poor record," Camille replied.
Dahlia approved immediately. They eventually moved into separate apartments in the same building. Camille told him she was not ready to combine homes. Aaron accepted, without using the delay as proof of rejection. Perhaps they would marry. Perhaps they would not. A healthy relationship did not need a guaranteed ending to justify its present. Victor appealed his conviction twice and lost. From prison, he continued insisting the company would collapse without him. Common Ground posted record employee retention in the second year and stopped responding. Nolan completed education programs while incarcerated and issued a public apology that named his actions without blaming romance. Beatrix reported the apology and did not declare him transformed. Change, she wrote, was a pattern measured after the audience left. Portia removed the old clips when platforms finally enforced the settlement. Years later, she sent Camille an apology with no link, sponsorship, or request for forgiveness. Camille acknowledged receipt and left the future open. Greer joined a nonprofit that taught family company employees how to report financial pressure. She remained imperfect and occasionally gossiped more than she should. Camille called her out. Greer learned to apologize before constructing a defense. Jasper's instrument verification joke survived every family gathering. Livia began calling all guitars pianos just to make him react. "The child is spreading misinformation," he complained. "She learned from the internet," I said. At 5, Livia asked why a woman had interrupted our wedding. We had removed the public videos, but another child at school had heard a simplified version. Dahlia and I answered together. "She was sad and made a poor decision," Dahlia said. "Did you hate her?" Livia asked. "No," I said, "but not hating someone does not mean giving them what they want." "Did Mom win?" Dahlia shook her head. "A wedding is not a race between women."
Livia considered this.
"Then why did everyone run?" We did not have a good answer. On our 5th anniversary, we returned to the glass house at Whitmore Gardens. Not for a vow renewal with hundreds of guests. The apprentice scholarship funded by my old ring held its graduation reception there, and Common Ground had designed the temporary exhibition. Camille attended in a blue suit. Dahlia wore green. A visiting curator wore a red dress, and Jasper whispered that security should inspect her for unresolved promises. Marisol removed him from the front row. 7 scholarship graduates presented housing designs. None knew their funding began with jewelry from a failed relationship. That was how Camille wanted it. After the reception, guests left beneath the same glass doors she had once pushed open in the rain. Camille paused beside them. "I used to replay that entrance and imagine saying something different," she told me. "What would you say now?" "Nothing. I would turn around."
That would have been better. Much less memorable. We both smiled. Camille offered her hand. "Goodbye, Grant." It was not a dramatic forever. We would still meet at project events. Our companies occupied the same city. Goodbye meant the private story no longer needed another conversation. I shook her hand. "Goodbye, Camille." She joined Aaron outside and left. Dahlia approached after giving us space. "Closure?" "A normal goodbye." "Those may be the same thing." The glass house staff turned off the exhibition lights. Only garden lamps remained, illuminating the aisle where our wedding had paused and continued. Livia was spending the night with Joanna and Edmund. We had the building to ourselves for 10 minutes before security closed it. I took out my phone and played the recording of our guitar song. "You planned this," Dahlia said. "I am capable of romance with notice." 5 years of improvement. We walked to the platform without flowers or formal clothes.
I held both her hands.
"Do you remember our public vows?" I asked. "You promised to listen before solving."
I remain inconsistent. You have improved. You promised to say fear before turning it into strategy. Also inconsistent. Also improved. Marriage had not transformed us into perfect people. It gave us a place where imperfection could be named before it became betrayal. Would you choose it again? I asked. Dahlia looked around the glass house, through the roof at the clear night beyond it. Yes, with the same prenuptial agreement and stronger vacation enforcement. Demanding goddess. Do not call me that. Most beautiful infrastructure reviewer? Worse. Dahlia? Her expression softened. That one. I choose you again, Dahlia. I choose you again, Grant. We kissed on the same platform without anyone interrupting. Security gave us 12 minutes instead of 10. Driving home, we passed the museum where Camille had made the call to Nolan.
The rooftop lights were visible above the trees. I did not feel the old, hollow pain. I felt recognition for a younger man who loved earnestly and believed endurance could solve a decision another person refused to make. He had not been stupid. He had been wrong about what loyalty required. The difference mattered. Dahlia rested her hand on the center console. I covered it with mine. What are you thinking? She asked. That people will always prefer the story where I secretly became powerful and replaced my ex with someone prettier. You were already powerful. Professionally, perhaps. No. You asked for an answer and accepted it. Wealth did not do that. And you were always prettier. Careful. I have a weakness for accurate observations. She rolled her eyes, but the familiar blush crossed her nose. At home, Livia had escaped bedtime and was waiting on the sofa between my parents.
She demanded the story of our wedding because anniversaries apparently required historical reenactment. I told the short version. A woman arrived late, I said. She thought a choice could be changed because she finally disliked the consequence. Then what? Livia asked. Your mother and I listened. We answered. We finished the ceremony. Did you live happily ever after? Dahlia sat beside her. We lived honestly after. Happiness visited often. Livia accepted that and fell asleep before the story ended. The next morning, she asked whether choices could expire. Some can, I said. A train ticket, a restaurant reservation, an offer with a fair deadline. What about love? Dahlia answered from the kitchen. Love changes. That is why people keep talking instead of assuming one old answer controls every new day. Livia seemed satisfied and returned to building a bridge from breakfast boxes. Her question stayed with me. Camille had treated Nolan's teenage joke as a promise that matured automatically. I had treated 7 years of devotion as proof that one more month of waiting must be worthwhile. Victor treated family ownership as permanent permission. Even our families initially treated marriage as a route through which influence should naturally travel. The pattern was always the same, a decision made once, then protected long after the people and conditions changed. At Halberg Union, I introduced term limits for family-appointed directors and mandatory review of unpaid related party work. Edmonds supported both measures, even though they reduced the control I would inherit. Whitmore Civic published marital conflict rules based on the system Dahlia and I used. Common Ground created paid contracts for every family member, partner, or friend who contributed professional work. None of the policies sounded romantic. That was precisely why they mattered. Good intentions were not controls.
Love was not an invoice. Gratitude was not consent. A family name was not competence. And a long history was not an obligation to create a longer one. Camille later wrote a short essay for the public archive. She did not name me, Nolan, or the wedding. She called it The Cost of the Door Left Open. She described how ambiguity let powerful people avoid responsibility while less powerful people carried the weighting. The final paragraph said that closure did not arrive when another person gave the perfect answer. It arrived when she stopped organizing her life around the possibility of that answer changing. Dahlia read the essay and placed it on my desk. Good?
I asked. Very. Painful? Also very. We donated copies to the scholarship program. Years after the fundraiser, the Hartwell Museum invited me back to speak about public infrastructure. The rooftop tables were arranged almost exactly as they had been that night.
I found the place where my ring once rested beside Camille's dessert. Nothing marked it. Jasper stood beside me. Want to steal the table? Why? Symbolic destruction. It is museum property. You have become painfully responsible. I left the table where it was. During my lecture, I told students that risk models failed when designers assumed people would behave as expected under pressure. The same was true of relationships. A plan built on someone remaining obedient, silent, hopeful, or afraid was not stable. It was merely waiting for reality. Afterward, a student asked what the best contingency plan was. A clear exit, I said, and enough honesty that nobody has to use it in secret. At home, Dahlia had saved the live stream of the lecture, not because she worried where I went, but because she wanted to mock one slide with too much text. She was correct about the slide. I revised it while she made tea, and Livia practiced guitar in the next room.
She played every chord incorrectly and with great confidence. I considered teaching her the proper fingering, then listened until she finished before offering a solution. Dahlia noticed. 5 years of improvement, she said again. Permanently under review. Acceptable. I carried her to bed while Dahlia turned off the lights. The station watch remained on my wrist. Our wedding rings showed small scratches from years of ordinary use. The guitar waited in the study beside crayons and project reports. No empire had been won through marriage. No woman had been replaced like an accessory. No grand family name had created the self-respect I lacked.
Camille rushed to my wedding, expecting to find the man who once waited for her decision. She found him standing beside a woman who had already made hers. And I did not win because my bride was richer, more famous, or more beautiful. I won the moment I stopped accepting the role of someone's second choice, and learned that real love does not ask one person to wait while another door remains open.